All right, ladies and gentlemen, the time is. Well, I might as well say I'm a minute late. Sorry about that, everybody. Welcome back to more Solo Leveling and its light novel. Today, we are going to be checking out chapters 61 through 70 today. Good to see you, Kitty. Good to see you, Mihai. Let's go ahead and begin. Because last we left out on, Jin was separated from Kim Chol's group. Because Kim Chol sees anyone that is below B rank, basically lesser, or anyone who's B rank lesser, and they've been separated in order to ensure his own group survives more, while Jin is tending to and managing everyone else who is basically left behind. But of course, we all know that being with Jin is probably the best decision, which is why one of the B ranks who was with Kim decided to go with Jin because she could tell of his hidden potential. So let's begin with Chapter 61. There was one more thing, one more reason why Jin chose the forest route. Status window.
Name: Sung Jinu, level 51. Class: Shadow Sovereign. Title: The One Who Overcame the Adversity.
Jin silently summoned his status window and swapped his current title from the one who overcame the adversity to that of the Slaughterer of Wolves.
Title: Slaughterer of Wolves. A title given to a hunter skilled in hunting wolves. When facing animal-type monsters, all of your stats will increase by 40%.
Sorry about that. I forgot to switch to the live feed. So that way your chat is right up there. Sorry about that. I'm glad I caught that a full minute in.
A title given to a hunter skilled in hunting wolves. When facing animal-type monsters, all of your stats will increase by 40%.
A chance to abuse this plainly cheating buff had fallen on his lap. So why should he go anywhere else now?
Ding! An animal-type monster has appeared. The effect of the current title will activate.
A smile crept up on Jin's face after he confirmed his stat values shooting up. Nice. It was then. The hunters all began screaming out loudly. It's the bear!
It's the ice bear!
An ice bear that had picked up on the scents of humans was slowly trudging towards the group. These humans were its enemies that had invaded its territory. Obviously, it not looked too kindly towards the intruders. The ice bear bared its fangs, transparent like ice, and slowly raised its massive frame on its hind legs. Its huge and hulking figure completely filled up the hunter's visions. The creature did resemble a polar bear, but it was almost twice the size, and the magic crystal, the symbol of all monsters, could be seen in the middle of its chest area, as if it was some kind of a proud emblem. It roared out furiously, the ground seemingly quaking under its might. All the hunters, excluding Jin, all froze stiff on the spot after hearing the ice bear's roar. Park Hui-jin's expression crumpled unsightly. Oh, so we only need to be
mindful of ice bears, was it?
'Cause mind you, Jin chose the forest path because they only had to worry about the ice bears. But given how formidable they seem, it seems like that may have been a bad idea in the eyes of Hui-jin.
Oh, so we only need to be mindful of ice bears, was it?
How could anyone say that sort of nonsense after seeing that monster? She almost fell for Jin's pretty convincing argument. But upon seeing an ice bear, she was certain of one thing.
We definitely shouldn't have chosen the forest route.
Sensing the approaching danger to the group, Hui-jin stepped out in front of the group and shouted out,
I'll draw its attention towards me, so everyone must...
The scruff of Hui-jin's neck was yanked back by a considerable force, and she had to backstep several times to make sure that she didn't end up on her butt. After somehow regaining her balance, she raised her head only to find Jin standing before her. "Hey, what was all that about?" Jin pointed at Huijin. "I'm telling you this right now. I'll be killing all the monsters from now on." Obviously, he couldn't let anyone steal his experience points, now could he? For Jin, these bears were perfect health tonics to buff him up for his inevitable showdown with the true enemies of this place, the White Phantoms.
Huh?
Huijin couldn't hide her astonishment.
Did he just yank me back because he wants to monopolize the monster?
The other two male hunters, who so happened to be mage types, also stopped casting their spells in sheer dumbfoundedness.
No matter how strong you think you are, that thing is a monster of a high-ranked dungeon.
Completely ignoring Huijin's furious voice coming from behind him, Jin walked right towards the ice bear. "Well, it's not going to be okay to use daggers for this one." The blood splatter would make a mess of things, wouldn't it? Jin had already summoned his two daggers almost out of reflex, but stored them back in his inventory. Instead, he clenched his fists tightly. "Well, I promised to just observe, but this is an emergency, so I'm sure they'll understand, right?" Jin's glare collided midair with the ice bears. The ice bear swung its telephone pole thick front arm towards Jin like a streak of lightning. However, the attack only swiped at the empty air. Why is it so fast compared to its size? Jin was already above the ice bear's head. Ice bear sees his Sung Jinu trying to fight him right now. Ice bear is very intimidated. Sorry, had to do it. Jin was already above the ice bear's head. It was here that he kind of understood the reason for this monster's infamy. Even then, he also sensed that all his level-ups until now weren't in vain. Before the ice bear could lift its head up, Jin punched with all his might right in the middle of the monster's forehead. Kaboom! The head of the ice bear slammed down on the snowy ground with an explosive force. Its skull was completely obliterated, with its limp tongue hanging outside the slack maw. The ice bear stopped moving completely.
Level up.
Heck yeah! He was thinking that his level up was just around the corner, and now he was glad to have stopped Huijin from taking any action.
You, just what are you?
Jin heard that trembling voice and looked behind him, only to spot four speechless faces staring back at him. Jin sheepishly scratched the side of his head. I warned them earlier because I didn't want to run into this sort of situation. It seemed that a person would become rather forgetful whenever he or she witnessed something utterly beyond their capacity to understand. Left with little choice, Jin had to state his position once more. I told you, I'll not tolerate anyone asking me questions. If you're unhappy with my methods, then... Jin pointed his finger in the direction of Kim Joel's team. You can always go that way. Only then did Huijin regain her senses and her facial expression changed.
You think I'll leave your side after seeing how you one-punched that ice bear?
Honestly, Huijin was now overflowing with joy. She only chose to follow this youth because her gut feeling said he'd be a better option than Kim Joel, but holy cow, she quickly discovered that she had quite literally stumbled onto an unexpected jackpot here. She was blessed with a quick head, so it was easy to come to a conclusion. If she really wanted to get out of this place alive, then she had to follow Jin. She feared that Jin might suggest they go their separate ways, so she hurriedly made a suggestion first, her heart beating anxiously.
Mr. Jin, please take over the leader's position. We'll definitely follow every one of your commands from now on.
Well, I did say I wouldn't humor their demands at all, but... Jin pondered for a bit before nodding his head. Thinking about the near future, it seemed that this arrangement would prove to be convenient for him. Hui Jin looked behind her. The student named Han Song Yi was someone Jin brought along, so there was no need to ask her. So that left the two male hunters.
I'm sure you two also agree with my suggestion, yes?
The two hunters, now being on the receiving end of the unexpected stare, alternated their gazes between the corpse of the ice bear and Jin before hurriedly nodding their heads. Once more, in front of the red gate, Ki Chol used his handkerchief to wipe away the cold sweat from his brows, his eyes locked on his watch. Baek Yun-ho asked him,
How long has it been?
It's been about 3 hours now, sir.
3 hours. Meaning, it's almost been 3 days inside.
Yun-ho's voice sounded grave. Out of 4 people gathered here, only he had personally experienced entering a red gate before. One of the S-rank hunters representing South Korea, Baek Yun-ho. Even to someone like him, a red gate was a challenging place to survive. With a complicated expression, Yun-ho recalled his experiences.
The most terrifying aspect of the red gate is that you're thrown into a completely different world.
This was a rare recollection of the past as told by an S-rank hunter. Naturally, the attention of An Sung-min, Ju Sung-chan, and Hyun Ki-chol focused on him. Sorry about that. Yun-ho continued on.
Once you cross the gate, the place you end up could be a desert with temperatures soaring past 60 degrees Celsius, or it could be a dense jungle full of poisonous insects and snakes. Or it could be the middle of a snow-covered field where it's so cold that you immediately develop frostbite.
The 3 men simultaneously swallowed their saliva. That's one.
Until you actually enter it, no one knows what awaits them beyond the red gate. So, how can anyone prepare for something like this?
It was the same story as today. The gate that looked plain and normal immediately changed its color to red as soon as hunters entered it.
Your skin is burning under the hot glares of the sun, or you're tormented by poisonous insects throughout the day, or your flesh rots from the skin-peeling cold. And so, the weakest of your group would start dying first.
Oh my god.
Ki Chol spat out a gasp as if he could hardly calm himself down.
But even when you're in such a perilous situation, you still have to fight monsters as well.
Just from listening to his explanations, they could understand the hopelessness of the current situation. However, the explanation didn't end there.
Okay then, let's say that you've somehow adapted to your new environments. From then on, you will have to procure food.
Indeed, one would have to procure enough food to last a few weeks at a minimum, or at worst, for several months. Now that would be a huge challenge in and of itself.
While stuck in the unforgiving surroundings and suffering from constant hunger, all you can trust is your magic energy compass.
The magic energy compass always pointed towards the source of a powerful magic energy emission. The only ways to escape from a red gate were to follow the needle of the magic energy compass, locate the boss, and kill it, or wait until the dungeon break occurs.
Now, think about waiting for days, weeks, or even months while only staring at that compass. How can anyone not go mad from that?
The 3 men nodded their heads. These 3 knew that normal people like them would not last one day in places as hostile as those.
I said that it's been 3 days already, didn't I?
Yes.
After hearing Ki Chol's reply, Yun-ho formed a distressed expression. Ramil, it's good to see you.
Most likely, all hunters ranked C and below have died by now.
Kim Chol was ranked A. However, no matter how good his skills were, it was impossible for a rank A to protect everyone, unless it was a rank S hunter standing by their side. Which meant
all we can pray for now is the safe return of the higher-ranked hunters.
this was the conclusion derived from his personal experience. In Yun Ho's mind, the hunters ranked C and below were already as good as dead by now. Evening. Large chunks of meat were nicely sizzling on top of a campfire.
You know, this bear meat, it's a bit chewy, but not as bad as I thought.
Would you like some more?
Oh, thank you kindly.
What's the current saliva count? 1.
Hey, go, thank you kindly.
Go Myung-hwan expertly sliced the meat of the ice bear and placed them on a plate pushed forward by Ki-jung. These two men were the rank C hunters following Jin. Both Hui-jin and Song-yi were also slowly chewing on the bear meat, although their portions weren't as large as the men's.
Uni, please pass me the pepper. What about salt? The seasoning's just about fine, so it's okay.
They all looked to, more or less, have adapted to the living conditions of the dungeon. From the campfire to the blankets wrapped around them, and the tents all set up too. They didn't seem to be in trouble at all. Heck, from a certain perspective, one could say that they looked rather comfy instead. Myung-hwan scanned the vicinity and spoke up.
Don't you think the attacks of the ice bears have lessened lately?
Hui-jin replied to that question.
Well, that's because the team leader has annihilated their numbers. That's why.
That man, it's like he has some sort of unresolved vendetta against these bears from his previous life or something. His eyes go all crazy when he spots an ice bear. He's so scary whenever he does that. Really, really scary.
By now, Jin's title had been set as the team leader. Hui-jin felt Jin's absence and craned her neck a little to scan the surroundings herself.
Now that I think about it, where did the team leader disappear to?
Ki-jung had his head almost buried in the plate as he chomped down on the meat, but still raised his head to make his reply.
He went out a little while ago, saying that he was going to take a look around here.
Huh.
Hui-jin formed a helpless expression.
Roaming inside a high-ranked dungeon all alone. Isn't he scared at all?
Ki-jung formed a sly grin.
If it's him, it's not gonna be a problem.
Oh well, he's strong enough to kill ice bears, high-ranked monsters with his bare hands after all.
Myung-hwan followed up to Yu Ki-jung's words and continued on.
But, by the way, since we're all discussing this and all, just how high must your rank be if you can beat up a nonsensically huge monster like that?
Stop. Everyone suddenly became utterly silent. They were all curious about the same thing as well. But they dared not say anything, fearful of being kicked out of this place.
Let's just finish our meals first.
Everyone nodded their heads at Hui-jin's suggestion. Jin searched through the forest and made his exit as he brushed past some thickets.
It must be somewhere nearby.
He could sense the presences of multiple ice bears coming from somewhere. From last night, he had been carefully tracking the ice bears. This was all because he had finally realized that ice bears were coming from the same direction. Jin continued to search before his eyes began glittering dangerously.
Found you.
He spotted dozens of caverns on a cliff-like wall, lying beyond some bushes, and he sensed presences of more than one life form coming from each of the caves. Heck, he didn't even have to expand his perception here. His eyes could clearly see many ice bears lazily moving in and out of several caves. Just a quick head count, and he found over 30 bears. In other words, this was literally a bear farm. Oh, I love how that's put. The corners of Jin's lips arched up. He deliberately came here alone to eliminate the possibility of eyewitnesses. This would be the perfect opportunity to utilize his shadow soldiers. Indeed, he had been waiting for a moment like this.
Detegoi, come out.
When he inwardly called out, the soldiers wearing black armor soundlessly materialized and surrounded him.
You all understand that this is your first sortie, right?
What he meant by this was, just as one's impression was decided upon through the first encounter, these guys would have to impress him with their first battle too.
The shadow soldiers stood at attention in eerie silence, with nary a hint of disorder.
Nice. Jin smirked deeply, seeing them like that. Meanwhile, more and more ice bears began emerging from the caves after detecting Jin's scent.
Looks like the other side is done preparing too.
Jin pointed at the ice bears.
Go.
As soon as his order was issued, the shadow soldiers rushed forward as if they were sliding on ice. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter 61. Onwards to chapter 62. Now, let me just talk about what you guys have been saying in chat. Try imagining the ice bear's point of view. You got a whole squad of ice bears. From your perspective, you have once been the most dangerous thing in the forest other than the ice elves. But you have one lone man who is hunting you down, not even using his daggers, but using his bare hands. And he's hunting every single one of you by himself. It must be terrifying. This must be, you see it, if you want to imagine what it's like to be hunted by a superior predator, just think of Dutch and his team from the Predator movies when they were hunted by the Predator. Essentially that. But yeah, enough musing from me. Chapter 62. The shadow soldiers rapidly closed in on their targets. Unfortunately, the angry swipes of the ice bear's front paws were faster than their movements.
Swing! Kaji!
A single hit and one shadow soldier was obliterated. If it wasn't a shadow underneath the armors, but an actual human being, that attack would surely have ripped him apart into several pieces. Jin frowned deeply.
As I thought. Did I ask for too much?
Whether it was their physical strength or their body sizes, these ice bears were difficult enemies for the shadow soldiers to fight against. However, something quite surprising happened next. Jin's eyes opened wider. The soldier, with its chest torn open by the ice bear's attack, suddenly transformed into a clump of black smoke just before it fell to the ground. The black smoke coagulated in a spot a couple of steps away, and it reverted back to its original appearance.
Very good.
Jin's expression brightened up. The undeads. He remembered this crucial fact that he had unwittingly forgotten about until now. The ice bear became even more agitated than before after realizing its attack was all for nothing, and it roared out loudly. And so, as the infantrymen bought time out in front, the magic soldiers standing at the back had completed their spells. Boom! Kaboom! The balls of flames leaving the ends of the magic soldiers' hands exploded here, there, and everywhere. The shadow soldiers swept up in the explosions regenerated right away, but on the other hand, the ice bears could only roll around screaming in sheer pain and agony as their bodies caught on fire. Meanwhile, lag? I see no lag on my end. Yeah, I see no lag on my end. Everything's straight. Everything's good on my end. The ice bear, let me go back to the roars and growls. Meanwhile, the Shadow Soldiers didn't waste time and swiftly approached the defenseless bears before stabbing down on them with their blades.
Stab! Stab!
One by one, the triumphant and arrogant ice bears were falling at the cooperative tactics of the Shadow Infantrymen and the Magic Soldiers. Hiya. Jin continued to spectate on the proceedings with an expression filled with great interest and happiness. The infantrymen and their quick regenerative abilities, the magic soldiers and their superb firepower. The overall combat prowess of the Shadow Soldiers had far exceeded his initial expectations. Soon, the Ice Bears were forced into retreat by the might of the Shadow Soldiers and were pushed back towards the entrance of the caves. He was thinking that the end of the battle was drawing near, but then... Accompanied by the eardrum-shaking roar, a huge shadow slowly emerged from one of the caves. Isn't that? Even Jin's eyes grew extra round and super large. The bear that came out was at least a head taller and double the body size compared to others around it. Just a single swipe from this huge bear, and multiple soldiers were blown away. Kaboom! The regeneration rate of the soldiers could not keep up with the huge ice bear's relentless attacks. Clicker! Slam! Jin could only leak out a groan after seeing that. So, it's the leader of the pack, is it? He kind of expected that, since there was a pack, there should be a leader leading it too. However, the bastard turned out to be much bigger and stronger than he had anticipated. The huge ice bear leader obliterated all the Shadow Soldiers appearing before it and approached Jin at a frightening speed. It was at this point that a message popped up in his view.
Ta-ding! Your mana has been depleted and Shadow Soldiers cannot regenerate anymore.
What? He hurriedly checked his MP value, and just as the system had warned him, it was totally gone.
MP, 0 out of 1,860.
Once his MP had been drained, once his MP had been drained, the obliterated Shadow Soldiers didn't regenerate and simply entered back into Jin's shadow. Sorry, I read that wrong. That's on me. My apologies. In other words, in order to regenerate the lost soldiers, he needed lots more mana. That darn mana. One more reason to enhance his intelligence stat, then. Jin scratched the side of his head. With the appearance of the Ice Bear leader, the flow of the battle had reversed completely. However, Jin still had plenty of leeway. Since their boss has shown up, this side should also step up. Jin, still standing there with his arms crossed, summoned the boss of the Shadow Soldiers. Igris. One more shadow escaped from Jin's shadow, and from that, a shadow, a knight wearing a helm with a decorative mane, rose up soundlessly. Jin pointed forward with his chin. Igris bowed to Jin before rushing towards the Ice Bear leader. Tip, 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 tip. Igris lightly evaded the Ice Bear leader's front paw and slid between its hind legs. It brushed past the hind legs again, pulled out a dagger, and cut the bear's tendons. That was the beginning. Igris unsheathed his longsword and deftly evaded the bear's enraged attacks, all the while shaving away at the giant monster's body with his blade. Tendons, claws, front paw, legs, torso, eyes, lungs, pancreas. So many snacks, so little time. Bits and chunks of meat from various areas of the monster sheared off and fell to the ground piece by piece. Jin could only gasp out in admiration at Igris's crafty and elaborate movements. The last place Igris hit was the bear's head. Slice! The giant ice bear's head separated from its body and flew away. Before it landed on the ground, though, Igris easily snatched it. He trotted proudly towards Jin and knelt before him. Plop. And then he placed the dead bear's head before Jin's feet. It was as if the knight was presenting the spoils of victory to his sovereign. Jin swallowed dry saliva, that's two, and gazed at the kneeling Igris and his bowed head.
If Igris decided to use his sword from the beginning, would I have been able to defeat him?
The ice bears, without their leader present, lost all semblance of order and became utterly confused before they were cleanly swept away by the remaining shadow soldiers. That brought about the end to the battles. The result was truly satisfying.
Shadow Infantry Level 2. Shadow Infantry Level 3. Shadow Infantry Level 2. Shadow Magic Soldier Level 2.
The levels of the soldiers had risen up nicely. Also, as these shadow soldiers were seen as a part of his skill, even Jin's level had risen up by 3. Most of all, there was another point he found much to his liking.
Arise.
Shadow Extraction was a success.
And at that point would be the fact that he could recruit new friends now. From the shadows of several ice bears that Jin had selected, which obviously included the boss bear, black shapes began to slowly rise up.
And I thought that armor-wearing bears would pop up.
His expectation turned out to be far off the mark, unfortunately. These creatures came with the name tag that said Shadow Beast Soldier. At a casual glance, they kind of resembled bears, but it was still difficult to tell whether these monsters were actually corporeal or not. The creatures continued to pant as the black steam-like fog rose up from their backs.
Well, they might not look that great, but they are definitely the shadows of the ice bears.
That explosive strength, that destructive power. Without a doubt, they would prove to be useful. It happened then. Jin's ears twitched after hearing the roars of bears coming from the distance. There were several of them, as a matter of fact.
Meaning, this isn't the only bear farm, huh?
It was already getting too late today, so should he pay a visit there tomorrow? A bright smile formed on Jin's face. His comrades screamed in despair. Kim Cho's bloodshot eyes shot wide open.
No, this can't be! How can this Kim Cho fail?
He was supposed to be the elite of the White Tiger Guild. They even trained him with a special program so he'd enter the guild's main combat force right away. However, to fail like this, he could not acknowledge it. While endearing, hold on, let me see. Bruh, the sound effects are on point. Well, thank you. This man's gonna kill the entire neighborhood? Yes. While enduring against the biting cold and starvation, they fought off against a group of snowmen. Then they encountered snow giants. They lost 2 of their numbers, but in the end emerged victorious against the giants. He thought that the conquest of this dungeon was going according to plan. However, as soon as the desperate struggle against the snow giants ended, the white phantoms sneak attacked from the rear as if they were waiting for this chance. These wicked, treacherous bastards had been in hiding, waiting for the raid team to exhaust all their stamina first. What happened next was a one-sided massacre. In the blink of an eye, the hunters were annihilated.
Captain!
A fallen hunter reached out towards Cho with his bloodied hand. Cho could only retreat in faltering steps. Suddenly, a white phantom appeared on top of this fallen hunter. It pulled out a dagger and swiped it under the hunter's neck. The white phantom smiled as it sliced the neck off and raised its head to look at Kim Chol. Kim Chol could only scream in terror. And then, not even taking one look behind him, he ran straight into the forest. There were ice bears in the forest. Compared to snowmen, snow giants, and the white phantoms that appeared before him, those unseen ice bears came across as laughable existences right now. Shoal summoned every ounce of his energy and then ran even harder. The white phantoms glared at the departing back of fleeing Kim Chol and raised their bow. Just as they took aim and got ready to fire, a white phantom with white hair extending all the way down to its waist raised its arm and stopped the attack. The white phantoms lowered their bows. When the long-haired elf signaled the others to follow Chol, the white phantoms began disappearing from where they stood one by one. Kim Chol ran out of the thick bushes. He couldn't catch his breaths at all. Still, when he recalled the derisive smirks on the white phantoms' faces as they massacred the hunters, he felt like peeing himself from fear. Kinda descriptive, His gaze inexplicably lowered to his hands. He couldn't feel much from his frozen hands now. He had lost all feelings in his feet a long time ago. In his current condition, he couldn't even fight properly.
Ugh. If it weren't for this darn cold. No, if we weren't starving for several days, we wouldn't have been annihilated like that.
In the end, Kim Chol couldn't acknowledge the failure of the raid team. No, his own failure. Muttering to himself, Chol raised his head.
By the way, where am I? How deep in the forest is this?
Chol began scanning the surroundings. Then he picked up on a faint smell coming from a distance. Chol began following that smell. It wasn't that far. Once he walked past the trees and escaped out in an open area, he was greeted by an unbelievable spectacle.
But how can this be? How can this be?
He found over 20 dead ice bears surrounding a cave entrance, and he thought it was odd to not see a single ice bear when every single tree was marked by them.
What is going on here?
Chol investigated the conditions of the carcasses. They all showed sword-inflicted wounds. Some of them even had signs of being burnt alive. Almost immediately, Chol thought about seeing Jin and the hunters following him.
Could they have? Did they do this to these ice bears?
No, it couldn't be. Kim Chol shook his head. The wounds on ice bears were inflicted with long swords. As far as he knew, none of the hunters that went into the forest used a sword.
Besides, the two ranky hunters didn't even wield any weapons.
If you were to look at the situation objectively, then there was no chance that those people were still alive. In that case, there could only be one explanation.
There are white phantoms nearby.
His heart fell to the pit of his stomach. Here he was, thinking that he had finally lost those darnable white phantoms, yet they were actually residing close by. Scared stiff now, Chol held his breath and hurriedly returned to the forest. A little bit further away and a little bit faster than before. He wanted to escape from the territory of the white phantoms as soon as possible. Around the same time, an ice bear cried out and fell to the ground. Shadow soldiers pounced on it and made sure it was no longer able to draw breath.
Level up.
Very nice. Jin was standing at another bear farm. It had been 5 days since his arrival in this snowy world. He had already cleaned up 3 bear farms in the meantime. Looks like I've killed most of the bears in this forest. His level had risen up quite a bit during this time. It was the same story for his soldiers, too. Initially, they had to attack a bear in a pair to kill it, but now they could eke out a victory in a one-on-one fight. This was very satisfying. Once the stats of the soldiers rose up, Jin assigned them different roles. He could store 30 shadows now. 28 soldiers participated in battles. 1 went around picking up magic crystals, while the remaining 1 secured the bear meat. He didn't even have to move a finger, but still ended up with loot from the hunts, so this was proving to be oh so convenient for him.
I can't sense the presence of other monsters around here anymore.
It seemed that he had more or less took care of all the monsters inside the forest. In that case,
should I think about killing the boss?
It could be at least a month, or in the worst case scenario, several months before the dungeon break occurs. He couldn't just sit here and wait for a gate that who knows when it'd show up. I had to read that again, my cadence was off. He couldn't just sit here and wait for a gate that who knows when it'd show up.
And I still need to kill that insolent little elf bastard too.
That measly monster that dared to provoke hunters. Its cocky grin still remained etched in his memory. The scent of meat was coming from somewhere. Kim Chol sniffed the air with his nose. Hopefully that wasn't too uncomfortable for everyone when I made that sound. Sorry ahead. Just apologies for that. Kim Chol sniffed the air with his nose, now super perceptive due to his extreme hunger. The only food he ate since his imprisonment behind the red gate was a single rabbit. Picking up on the smell of food, he reflexively swallowed down his ravenous saliva. That's 3. Perhaps the White Phantoms were having a meal nearby.
Still, if their numbers are low,
then he could subdue them and snatch away their food. His hunger was extreme enough for him to arrive at such a conclusion.
Let's go and take a look.
Chol walked as silently as possible and cautiously approached the source of the smell, and eventually he hid inside the bush and discovered the hunters who had left along with Jin. Chol's eyes grew wider from the revelation. What, the sniffing doesn't bother me? Yeah, but some people can be particular, so I just thought I apologize ahead of time.
What the heck?
The smell of meat was coming from the campfire they had raised.
How can they still be alive?
Chol began glaring. He couldn't find one ranky hunter among their midst.
It must have been killed first after taking the lead like a fool.
That would be an obvious thing, wasn't it? However, there was a not-so-obvious spectacle unfolding before his eyes. So how should he go about explaining this situation, then? Something didn't add up.
Wait, hold up. They're attired.
Clothes and blankets designed to keep warm. Tents and several pieces of equipment could be seen. They were obviously well prepared.
Just how can this be?
Chol was getting flustered even more, but then his gaze had stopped by at a certain place. It was a piece of bread sitting next to sizzling meat, meaning these people even had food ready. His confusion immediately morphed into a rage.
These bastards!
Grit. Kim Chol began gritting his teeth. There's actually a sound effect for gritting your teeth. How does one even make that sound? I can only say the word. How does one make a grit sound? Grit doesn't have a sound. What in the world? Kim Chol began gritting his teeth. They had enough supplies to ensure their continued survival, yet they wanted to hog them all for themselves.
If my hands hadn't frozen up, no. If only I wasn't starving, I'd have easily dealt with those ice elves.
Realizing that these bastards had snatched away the crucial supplies that should have been shared among the rest of the team, he couldn't hold back his fury anymore. Chol angrily ran out of the bushes. "You sons of..." And, of course, he says that word, but I don't use profanity. Park Hui-jin quickly shot up from her spot. clearly surprised.
Kim Cho, how did you get here?
She found it rather difficult to lie here and say it was good to see him again, because Cho's glare was full of murderous intent. Indeed, he didn't even bother to mask his hostility.
My raid team failed to conquer this dungeon because of the lack of supplies. Yet how can all of you find yourselves with this much food and this type of equipment?
That is...
Huijin couldn't continue on. If she mentioned Jin here, then Cho's rage would be directed towards the youth. To her, Jin was her savior. Also, that man
always looked at Jin in a suspicious manner.
Huijin shut her mouth immediately. That prompted Cho's eyes to open even wider in anger. He needs a Snickers, you're not you when you're hungry? Definitely. But I think he's gonna need more than just a single Snicker. That prompted Kim Cho's eyes to open even wider in anger.
Even if I don't think all of you were complicit in this crime. So, who had hidden these? Tell me the truth and I will ignore everything else.
A thick vein popped up on Cho's neck.
Tell me who monopolized all the gear and drove his comrades to death!
His angry roar reverberated throughout the forest. Cho was planning to shed blood here if it would appease the sin of betraying his comrades.
I'll count to 3. If you don't reveal who it was by then, I'll take it as a sign of all of you being complicit in this matter.
Song Yi tugged at Huijin's sleeve.
Oni!
Huijin hugged Song Yi. Both Go Myung-hwan and Yu Ki-jung swallowed their saliva, that's 4, as cold sweat soaked their backs. Chol was a rank A. Even if everyone present worked together, they wouldn't be able to win against him. However, none of them still mentioned Jin's name.
1.
Chol yanked loose his sword from the scabbard attached to his waist.
2.
Even then, the lower-ranked hunters showed no sign of opening their mouths. How dare lower-ranked hunters ignore his order? That point alone stoked the flames of Kim Chol's anger even higher.
Just what these bastards think of me as.
Murderous intent burned brightly in his eyes. He'd kill that woman first. He'd kill Park Huijin before anyone else, the one who betrayed the raid team and left along with these lower-rank hunters.
That's right. She left the raid team because she must have been scheming something.
He could only think that way. Chol stood before Huijin and spat out the last countdown.
3!
Huijin squeezed her eyes shut. It was then. 4.
Pow!
Cho was struck super hard by something in the back of his head and kissed the ground as his entire body slid across the snowy ground for several meters. The eyes of the hunters grew wider.
Team leader!
Jin had hit Kim Chol so hard that steam was still rising from his palm. Jin spoke in a dumbfounded voice.
How dare you speak rubbish when it was you who drove your friends to death?
And that is the end of chapter 52. Onwards to not chapter 62. Chapter 62. That was the end of chapter 62. Onwards to chapter 63. I had to correct myself. We're still in the 60s. You're laughing while reading? Because it's so humorous. It's so humorous. Chapter 63.
Oppa!
Song Yi displayed her happiness as tears formed in her eyes.
Team leader!
It wasn't as much as Song Yi, but still, the two male hunters' expressions also brightened up considerably. Huijin also breathed a sigh of relief after confirming Jin's face. Unfortunately, Jin didn't have much leeway to respond to their welcomes. Shh. Jin placed his finger on his lips and gestured them to keep quiet. The four people, seemingly getting ready to embrace Jin at any moment, all froze up like statues. Huijin cautiously asked.
What's the matter?
Jin glared at the fainted Kim Chol, the dumb bastard who deserved to be beaten up before turning around. Looks like Chol brought along unwanted visitors. He sensed countless presences hiding in the forest. Right now wasn't the time to worry about Chol or Go Chol or whatever. The real problem lay elsewhere, after all. After sensing Jin's glare, the white phantoms undid their stealth and revealed themselves one by one. At a quick count, there were around 20 of them. And among them, Jin's glare was fixed on a long-haired white phantom riding on horseback. That has to be the boss. An overwhelmingly mighty aura was coming from that creature, incomparably heavier than any ice bears and the white phantoms near it. If that guy wasn't the boss of this dungeon, then just who else could be? For the first time in a long while, Jin's skin broke out in goosebumps. Just as Jin was shivering ever so softly from its powerful aura, the boss also recognized Jin's strength in one go.
So, there really was one. A truly worthy being among all the human trash. What did you say?
When Jin spat out a response purely out of reflex, the boss displayed an expression of pure surprise.
You can understand our language?
Jin was also taken aback.
How is it possible to converse with this guy?
Not only could he understand what a monster was saying, but he could also actually converse with it too. A language he couldn't even remember learning before fluently rolled out of his mouth as if it was his mother tongue.
You know how to speak the language of the monsters?
Huijin's expression said her shock was so extreme that she didn't know what to do now. Seeing that, Jin realized that only he could understand what that boss was saying here.
Is this because of the system?
Like an automatic translation feature? Like an automatic translation feature? Jin switched his gaze back to the boss. The boss returned the gaze with great interest.
To be able to converse. Very good. There is someone I wanted to introduce to you.
The boss picked at one of the white phantoms standing behind it.
I'm sure you're familiar with him already.
Jin's glare sharpened instantly. Indeed, he recognized that particular white phantom.
That guy is.
That guy was none other than the bastard who fired an arrow at Song Yi before breaking out in a mocking grin. How could he forget that arrogant face? That exact same smile was still etched on the monster's face.
This friend informed me of a truly strong being among the humans, and this friend wishes to challenge you to a duel. So how about...
And even before the boss finished his words, the night killer Jin flew in a straight line. Stab! And the dagger landed right in the middle of the grinning white phantom's face. Gah! The shocked cry came from the hunters, though. Ki Jung hurriedly covered his mouth to stifle the cry he let loose inadvertently just now. Plop. The white phantom collapsed on the ground. Jin extended his hand out, and the night killer buried in the dead elf's face shook around a little bit before it got pulled out and flew back to him. Jin grasped the returned night killer in reverse grip and lowered his posture.
Anything else you want to say?
The boss spoke up in admiration.
You are indeed very strong.
Then it climbed off the horse. However, as if it wasn't planning to fight yet, it didn't draw its weapons nor showed any willingness to engage in battle.
However, you know this already, don't you?
The boss maintained a leisurely expression and continued to engage him.
That you can't fight this number all by yourself.
There were over 20 ice elves here. However, their number wasn't important. No, the real danger came from the fact that there was the boss monster among them. The rest of the white phantoms were no match for Jin, who had raised his level as much as he could by hunting every single ice bear in this forest. Exactly like the fool who got killed with a dagger to its face.
So, how should I go about killing the boss?
While Jin began kicking his brain into gear, the boss continued on.
So, I shall make a simple suggestion.
A suggestion?
That's right. It won't be such a bad suggestion for yourself.
Jin was inwardly surprised. It was a well-known fact that humanoid-type monsters possessed intelligence, but he never expected to see a monster trying to negotiate with a human, so he couldn't help but get curious here.
I'll hear it.
The boss smiled as if it had expected that answer and opened its mouth.
Before that, I want to ask you something. Why are you among these humans when you're not one of them?
Jin's expression crumpled deeply.
What nonsense are you talking about?
Ah, it seems you have no idea.
The boss guffawed out loudly before pointing to its temple.
Every one of us can hear a certain voice repeating itself in our heads. It tells us to kill humans. However, I can't hear that voice when I'm looking at you.
That's what this guy meant? In that case, Jin could think of a reason for that.
When the boss says humans, it's probably talking about hunters.
The thing was, he had changed to this strange something called player through the system during his ordeal in the underground temple. Technically speaking, he was slightly different from other hunters, meaning other awakened human beings.
That's why that guy thinks I'm not a human.
That made perfect sense. When Jin's expression slowly changed to that of an understanding, the boss nodded its head.
There's no need for us to fight each other, and our side does not wish to see needless casualties as well.
The boss finally got to the main topic.
Hand over the humans behind you. Then we will guarantee your life. How does my suggestion sound to you?
Before he answered, Jin asked back.
I want to ask you something too.
Fine, go ahead.
Just who are you? Where did you come from? And why do you wish to kill humans?
We are...
It happened then. The smiling face of the boss suddenly froze stiff, but that odd state lasted only for a brief moment. The boss regained its original expression and continued on.
There is no need for us to fight each other, and our side does not wish to see needless casualties as well.
What the heck was that?
Jin frowned deeply. The boss repeated itself like an NPC from a game that was asked a question that was not in the script, or one that it was not permitted to answer to begin with.
Hand over the humans behind you. Then we will guarantee your life. How does my suggestion sound to you?
Its expression showed how relaxed it was. In other words, it had not recognized how odd its own actions were. The white phantom standing behind didn't display any reactions towards the boss's strange behavior either. Jin continued to wordlessly observe then, prompting the boss to begin urging him.
Will you accept my suggestion or not?
Jin wanted to find out more about the monster's origins and their true intentions, but as it turned out, it was all a waste of time.
In that case,
the only thing remaining was to choose, but then again, he had made up his mind already a long time ago.
I refuse.
The corners of Jin's lips arched up.
You see, you possess a far too tempting shadow for me to let go.
He was planning to kill the boss and take away its shadow. And there was no way he'd change his mind now when he was constantly thinking about how to carry the plan out ever since the boss made its entrance.
Are you planning to fight my soldiers all by yourself? Do you really believe that you can overcome the disadvantages in numbers all alone?
Jin smirked derisively.
Soldiers, was it?
Soldiers, was it?
You think you're the only one? I've got them too.
He summoned his shadows. According to his wishes, the soldiers hiding in Jin's shadow all revealed themselves in the blink of an eye right behind him. Again, the cry came from the hunters this time as well. Ki-jung cried out in fright as the shadow of the ice bear, the shadow bear soldier, suddenly materialized right next to him, and he fell hard on his behind. When Jin took a glance at the pale faces of the surviving Ray team, he felt that it was a bit regretful, but this was an emergency situation. There was no time to explain things to them here.
Well, I wouldn't explain things to them even if this wasn't an emergency, though.
After summoning 29 shadow soldiers, Jin stood before them and glared at the boss.
So, who's disadvantaged now?
Finally, the boss displayed its hostility.
You seem to know some petty tricks, don't you? Fine. If it's your wish, I shall grant your death.
The boss unsheathed 2 daggers from its side. This was what Jin wanted as well. He grasped the Night Killer in his right hand, while the left grasped the Poison Fang of Kasuga as he got ready for battle.
Petty tricks, is it?
The boss had a point here. Jin might hold an advantage in numbers, but his army was still lacking if he wanted to hunt the boss down. Jin knew this very well. The boss's self-confidence could have come from this fact. Indeed, he now needed more comrades. Powerful comrades.
If it's a powerful comrade, then.
There was one candidate here. Jin sneaked a glance to his side. The still unconscious Kim Chol was lying there, unmoving. Attack! When the boss issued the order, the White Phantoms pulled on their bowstrings.
Bears!
Jin placed the bear soldiers at the front.
Stab, 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 stab.
The beast soldiers, with arrows sticking out of their bodies, all roared out in anger. Before the White Phantoms could knock the next volley of arrows, the infantrymen rushed forward. The magic soldiers also began chanting their spells. Meanwhile, Jin's eyes gleamed dangerously.
You're mine.
Jin deliberately pushed Chol's longsword towards its owner with his heel before pouncing forward himself as well. His sight was fixed solely on the boss of the White Phantoms. The boss, too, was waiting for Jin's arrival. Soon, sparks endlessly flew as the 4 daggers wielded by 2 creatures clashed in midair. Clang! 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 At the same time, the Shadow Soldiers and White Phantoms also slammed into each other as well. Myung-hwan looked at Hui-jin next to him.
So, shouldn't we lend assistance here?
Hui-jin shook her head.
This isn't a fight where we can butt in, you know.
This was a battle where huge black monsters were swinging their giant claws. The destroyed black soldiers were regenerating to their original state in the blink of an eye, and the gleaming blades and the arrows fired from the upper-ranked monsters, White Phantoms, were chaotically flying around in the snowy field.
So what can a rank B or C do in this place?
Indeed, the only thing they were permitted to do here was to pray. Hui-jin could only stare at Jin with a tight chest as he fought the long-haired White Phantom. Jin gasped out, as expected of a boss from the high-ranking dungeon. The fight looked to be even from the side, but Jin was getting cut and sliced constantly all over his body. Would he be able to last 3 minutes at this rate? His MP was also rapidly depleting away as his soldiers constantly regenerated. Finally, the magic soldiers managed to finish their chants. A ball of flames larger than a volleyball flew in the midst of the white phantoms. Kaboom! That was the power of the leveled up magic soldiers in full display. Awakened by the resounding eardrum-shaking explosion, Cho regained his consciousness and opened his eyes. Kim Cho raised his head to look. Clang, clang, pow! His blurry vision picked up on the sight of white phantoms fighting against the unknown black soldiers. What the heck is going on here? He couldn't figure out what happened while he blacked out, but at least he knew very well why he was lying on the ground like this. The hand that slapped him in the back of the head, and the voice that came from behind him. That voice definitely belonged to Sung Jin-woo. Now that he had regained his bearing, the sense of shame and rage bubbled over like crazy, and the ends of his fingertips trembled. This man really woke up with hate on his mind and hate in his heart and hate on his lips. He literally, this is before Kagurabachi, he literally woke up with fresh hatred. How fortunate that he could feel the hilt of his sword. If he was surrounded by the white phantoms, then he'd not get out of here alive. In that case, he must. I'll kill the bastard Sun Jin-woo with my own hands! His maddened eyes finally spotted the back of Jin. There he was. He was too busy fighting a white phantom and wasn't paying any attention to his rear. That was his chance. Cho stood up right away, and then ran. After sensing Cho running towards him, Jin laughed out inwardly in elation. Right, if it's you. Cho ran with all his might and after taking aim at Jin's neck, swung the sword hard. Die! In front, the boss. From behind, Kim Chol. Even though he was stuck in a seemingly dangerous situation, Jin still managed to shout out, Igris! As if he'd been waiting for that call, Igris jumped out from his shadow immediately and easily deflected Chol's sword. Clang! No! Chol's bloodshot eyes opened wider. However, even before he could say anything, Igris's sword pierced deeply into his chest. Stab! The blade ran straight through his chest and emerged from his back. Jin quickly took several steps back. I knew Chul would act this way. This fool was someone who didn't think about anything in depth and only acted according to his emotions. They had been together only for a short while, but that was enough for Jin to figure this guy out. Chul glared at Jin. You! And with that, Kim Chol breathed his last. As Igris stepped up to delay the boss, Jin issued an order to the shadow of the dead Kim Chol. Arise. When that happened, accompanied by a heavy, somber cry, a huge hand emerged from the shadow. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 63. Onwards to Chapter 64. Chapter 64.
Shadow extraction was a success.
There you go. Jin clenched his fist tightly. The final piece of this puzzle called the boss raid had fallen into its place. The black knight that emerged from Kim Chol's shadow was far larger and sturdier than the original version, and it even carried a huge war hammer in one hand as well. The other hand held a shield as tall as a grown man, and the overall impression this guy gave off was truly oppressive and threatening.
Kim Chol was a muscular man, but this shadow is just over the top.
Even though it was an urgent situation, Jin couldn't help but leak out a gasp of admiration.
Please set the soldier's name.
Ah, right, the name.
Jin sneaked a glance to his side. Perhaps finding the battle quite tough, Igris was having a hard time right now, being pushed around by the boss. Currently, he was barely buying enough time by relying on his cheat-like regenerative ability. Slice! Igris's arm was sliced off then.
I don't have much time to waste here.
A name, was it? Should he go with whatever? Maybe Kim Chol? Jin immediately shook his head. To call an undead with a name it used while it was still alive, that just didn't sit well with him. Right. His name was Kim Chol. Chol. So Iron it is. The name had been decided. As soon as Jin thought of that name, it was bestowed on the newly birthed Shadow Knight.
Iron, level 1, night grade.
A night grade. It was the same grade as Igris. But again, there was no time to celebrate.
I can't waste any more time like this.
Jin pointed to the boss. Iron! Iron's large frame lumbered forward quite heavily like a mountain.
Thud, thud, thud.
Jin really liked the new guy's huge frame, but he couldn't help but worry whether that lumbering speed could even catch up to the agile boss or not. Fortunately, such a worry was put to bed really fast. Iron leaned back and roared out loudly.
What was that?
Just as Jin was getting flustered, several messages popped up in his view.
Iron has used skill Shout of Provocation. The owner of the dungeon has fallen into an aggroed state.
An aggro skill.
Sorry, my voice was too high when I did that.
An aggro skill.
Chol was actually a rank A tanker. So, quite obviously, he possessed a high-level aggro skill, and the Shadow Knight extracted from his Shadow Iron had retained that skill in full, and was able to use it no problem. The head of the boss swiveled towards Iron. Although it could have chosen to finish Igris off right in front of its eyes, the boss simply pounced on Iron as if it had been hypnotized by a ghost or some such. Iron used the skill Reinforcement and endured the sharp dagger attacks of the boss digging into his body.
Nice.
Jin nodded his head in approval. In the meantime, Igris's sliced arm regenerated to full. The black smoke began oozing out from the stump and coagulated to form a new arm. Meanwhile, the boss was still preoccupied with Iron. And seizing this chance, Jin and Igris's combined assault began on the boss. Hui Jin became utterly speechless as the unbelievable spectacle unfolded right before her eyes. What she was seeing right now proved to be too unrealistic, too outlandish. She didn't even want to ask for clarification. Not anymore. From her side, Song Yi asked her with a timid voice.
Uni?
Hui Jin responded belatedly to her.
Huh? Do all fights of hunters look like this?
She must have been frightened silly because Song Yi's voice was trembling noticeably. Hui Jin replied to her, sounding helpless as well.
If that were the case, then I'd never have earned my license, you know.
Myung Hwan asked next, looking utterly dazed out of his mind. Could it be that we are dreaming right now? If this was indeed a dream, then it must have been a nightmare instead. Hui Jin looked back at the battlefield where the monsters and the black somethings were having a chaotic throwdown and spat out a long sigh. At the same time, a new worry formed in her mind.
When we get out of here, without a doubt.
There was no doubt that, as a survivor, she'd be asked several uncomfortable questions. How should she go about explaining what she was seeing here, then? Jean couldn't even begin to fathom just where she'd start her explanations on what happened inside the Red Gate, and in particular, the man named Sung Jinu. After she raised that point to everyone, but still, Ki Jung, sitting on the ground and shaking like a leaf, spoke with some difficulty. Isn't it an incredible thing that we can actually worry about what'll happen to us once we get out of here? The hunters all nodded their heads in unison. This was an upper-ranked dungeon. Not only that, a red gate, too. Hey, High Dragon, good to see you. Even though they found themselves in such a dangerous area, they were now worrying about the matters that would take place outside. This was all due to the power of one man. Huijin's gaze were directed towards Jin's.
Mr. Sung Jinu, you're...
Her feelings had moved way past shock and gratefulness, and she was beginning to feel a sense of awe towards him now. Stab! The poison fang of Kasuga stabbed into the boss's shoulder.
Effect. Paralysis has been activated. The effect has been cancelled due to the high resistance of the target. Effect. Bleeding has been activated. The effect has been cancelled due to the high resistance of the target.
With the increased levels of the enemies he'd been facing lately, the additional effects of the poison fang of Kasuga failed to activate properly more often than not. Still, inflicting injuries was a good thing in a fight. Nice. The boss's agile movements were being hampered, gradually due to the increasing number of wounds being inflicted on its body. The smile had disappeared from the boss's face a long time ago. The boss had been dodging the combined attacks of Jin, Igris, and Iron rather freely until then, but now it was quite obviously running out of breath. Just a little bit more. Iron suddenly bear-hugged the boss. Now! When Jin gave the signal, Igris rapidly retreated. Jin, too, quickly stepped back. The boss's eyes widened in confusion. What are you trying? Before he could finish, the magic soldiers completed the explosion spells and they rained down on Iron's position. Boom! Boom! Ah! For the first time ever, the boss spat out a sharp cry of pain. The bastard twisted its body around and Iron's arms fell off. The boss's enraged, murderous eyes were now firmly fixed on Jin. Seeing this, Jin could only feel admiration towards the boss once more. Even with such a heavy wound, it can still exhibit that much strength. As expected of a high-level dungeon's boss. Unfortunately for it, the scale had tilted away from it some time ago. Dagger throw. Just like what he did to that arrogant white phantom, Jin threw the Night Killer at the boss and added even more momentum by using the ruler's reach, which is the correct way to call it right now. Shoom! The dagger flew to its target in the blink of an eye. The boss realized that it was difficult to dodge the throw, so it used its own dagger to deflect Jin's blade. Crack! The Night Killer flew at such a frightening speed that the boss's dagger actually cracked from the impact force. And at the same time, Jin used stealth and dash skills to close the distance to the boss and stabbed the poison fang of Kasuga deep into the bastard's waist. Stab! The boss's eyes widened considerably. However, the boss still managed to grab Jin's wrist even in the midst of all this. It was not that hard to see the boss's desire to not go down without a fight from its crazed eyes. Just as the boss raised its dagger above its head to stab at Jin, Jin simply smirked. At the same time, a huge warhammer slammed into the head of the boss. Slam! The boss's face crashed into the snowy ground. Behind the boss, Iron was raising his hammer up high again, both of his arms already fully regenerated. The huge hammer flew down again.
Splat!
Igris was getting ready to attack, but then sheathed his sword back into the scabbard attached to his waist. Jin also stored his daggers back inside the inventory, and the expected messages popped up right away.
Tring! You've killed the owner of this dungeon. Level up. Level up.
Phew, it's finally over. Jin sighed grandly in relief. What a hard-fought victory that was. He was about to take a breather, but then saw iron in his eyes were extra round in surprise. Hey, you can stop now. Jin hurriedly stopped Iron. He was about to smash down with his hammer again, but finally stayed his hands. Perhaps it resembled the original too much, because the guy turned out to be a bit simple in the head like the original. Meanwhile, the boss's corpse had been pummeled into a meat paste already. However, its shadow isn't affected, so it's fine. Jin smirked deeply. Finally, the reward for this incredibly hard battle, the one he'd been salivating over, was right by his feet, waiting to be taken. Jin issued his order. Arise. It was now 3 a.m. The facial expressions of 4 men waiting out around the red gate were, as expected, not so good. Unable to endure any longer, Ki-Chol finally opened his mouth.
Guildmaster, we'll remain here and wait. So how about going home first, sir?
My guild members are trapped in there, so how can I even think about going home to relax now?
Yoon-ho was resolute in his decision. Indeed, that wasn't something the leader of a large guild, not to mention as a currently active rank S hunter, should entertain under this sort of situation. You prefer him hitting him after he was dead? But that's the thing, though. Iron was already hitting him after he was dead. And Jin stopped him because he had already reduced the body to a paste. So he still kind of did that. It just didn't showcase that he was constantly hitting him. We just get the after effect of, oh, he's been hitting him this entire time. Until Jin said, okay, you can stop now. Baek Yoon-ho was resolute in his decision. Indeed, that wasn't something the leader of a large guild, not to mention as a currently active rank S hunter, should entertain under this sort of situation. It was here that Songmin's eyes widened.
Huh? Look! The Red Gate!
Ki-Chol and Sung-chan also discovered an oddity with the Red Gate.
The red gate is closing up. The dungeon's been cleared.
There are people coming out!
Yoon-ho clenched his fist tightly.
That Kim Chol, did he manage to pull it off?
Everyone waiting there hurriedly rushed towards the front of the gate. Yoon-ho, unable to hide his excitement, began searching for the leader of this team, Kim Chol. However, even though all of the survivors came out, the big guy couldn't be seen.
Huh? This can't be right.
The one who had been insisting on believing in Kim Chol... Oh wait, This can't be right. The one who had been insisting on believing in Kim Chol, Ju Sung-chang. Chan's previously confident attitude was gone now, and his expression was getting warped as well.
Park Hunter, Huijin Hunter님, Young-hwan, Ki-jung, Hunter님, Sung-jinu Hunter님.
After spotting Jin walking along with Song-yi right behind the others, Song-min's face was quickly filled up with a huge smile.
I thought as much.
It was such a noticeable contrast from the face of Sung-chan. However, his face also faded away quickly. When 5 people, including Sung Jinu, walked out from the gate, the portal to another world slowly disappeared from their view.
It can't be. Is this everyone?
Jin nodded his head, looking rather exhausted. Ki Chol had asked that question, and after getting that silent answer, his expression hardened instantly.
How can this be?
Ki Chol's eyes teared up, and he reluctantly began crossing out the name of the deceased off the members list. This was a terrible job, but it had to be done regardless. Yun Ho had been staring at this in a daze, before gasping out in sheer shock and disbelief.
Only the lower rank hunters returned? Never mind the A rank. Only a single rank B survived?
Such a thing should not happen. Just what on earth happened inside that dungeon?
Let's go. I'll take you home.
Jin was about to lead Song Yi and leave the location, but Baek reached out and grabbed his wrist first.
Excuse me. Wait.
Slap. Jin fiercely shook off that hand. Yun Ho's eyes sharpened immediately.
We need to talk for a second here.
Jin turned around.
I'm tired. If you have questions, you should ask your own guild members.
Yun Ho couldn't hold back and revealed his identity.
I'm Baek Yun Ho, the guild master of the White Tiger.
Jin's eyes remained cold, however.
So what?
Being on the receiving end of Jin's cold response, Yun Ho's eyes suddenly transformed to that of a monster's. No, they completely resembled the beast now instead.
We lost guild members through this incident. As a master, I have the right to ask you a couple of questions regarding this matter.
This was no longer a request. It was an order, or even a threat. Didn't matter what anyone thought of his words, he was not planning to let Jin go that easily here. But then Jin too angrily stared back. He was not being cowered by the intense hostile aura oozing out in full force from the rank S hunter Yun Ho.
I rescued 3 of your people. If you're really their leader, shouldn't you be saying thanks to me first?
It was Yun Ho who had to withdraw his threatening aura first, as he was bombarded with his incredible pressure emanating from Jin. Besides that, what he said was logical as well. Yun Ho couldn't argue against the point raised.
I apologize.
Yun Ho lowered his head. Seeing this, Jin turned around once more to leave.
Song Yi, let's get going.
Okay.
Song Yi carefully studied the mood of this place and followed after Jin. The two of them got on the van and not too long after left the location.
This doesn't make any sense.
Yun Ho's thoughts were now in complete disarray. He quickly ran towards the sole surviving upper-rank hunter, Park Hui-jin.
Excuse me, Miss Park Hui-jin.
She had been trying to warm herself up with the cup of hot tea Ki Chol had handed over. She raised her head to meet Yun Ho's gaze.
What is the matter with that guy? Why was he so downbeat like that?
Imagine, that man had probably gone through an unimaginable hell and finally managed to escape from the Red Gate. Yet why was his attitude so murderous? Hui-jin shook her head, displaying her own confusion.
I also don't know, sir. After killing the boss, he stood in front of the dead body and shouted something out 3 times. And after that, he's been like that.
He was okay until then?
Hui-jin looked at Myung-hwan and Ki-jung. The 2 men nodded their heads simultaneously.
What a strange man.
Yun Ho muttered to himself as he stared helplessly at the street Jin had disappeared in. Song Min saw the state his boss was in and became incredibly nervous as if he had done something wrong instead.
My apologies, Guildmaster.
I'm sure he's like that because he's just exhausted. He's not a bad person, I assure you. At least, I believe he's not.
No, that's not the problem.
Pardon me? Yun Ho turned around to stare squarely at Song Min.
Why haven't you scouted that man already?
Eh? Sungmin couldn't hide his fluster, but it wasn't strong enough to best the fluster Yunho had felt just now.
Against me.
Yunho recalled Jin's fierce glare and could only nervously swallow his dry saliva. That's 5. Abruptly, he thought that were he to fight that man, he'd have to resolve himself to lose an arm. Or 2.
Maybe even worse than that.
Quickly figuring out what Baek Yunho meant, Sungmin hurriedly replied,
"We're doing our very best, sir."
That's clearly not enough.
Yunho's eyes began to sparkle rather dangerously. Sung Jinu. Indeed, Chief On's discerning eyes were on the money again.
From today onwards, you'll receive all the resources you need. You must bring that man into our guild, no matter what.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter 64. Onwards to chapter 65. After which, I'll take a short break, not to eat lunch because I am still full from breakfast, and then we'll come back and we'll read the remaining chapters. Chapter 65. On the way home. Jin was busy licking his lips in unhappiness as he drove the van. Was it because the gap between his stat values and the extraction targets were too great? What a disappointment it was, but his extraction attempts ended in failure. What a waste, but there's nothing I can do now. He'd still be able to kill a boss from a high-ranking dungeon in the future. Sorry, yeah. Yep, chapter 65, just 4 chapters in and already at count 5. Yeah, it feels like we're getting one every single chapter, it would seem. He'd still be able to kill a boss from a high-ranking dungeon in the future. What's important now was to quickly raise his skill levels high enough so that he'd not miss out on another chance. Leveling up. Now that was something Jin excelled in. And also, Jin's hand left the steering wheel for a little while, as a dagger with an elegant flowing arch blade appeared in his grip.
Item: Baruka's dagger. Rarity: A. Type: dagger. A dagger used by the great warrior Baruka. Weapon reduction magic has been applied to it, allowing the wielder's movements to become even more agile than before. Attack: plus 110. Agility: plus 10.
Well, he didn't walk away completely empty-handed. This was the dagger the boss had been using. There were 2, but one of them was broken, so he threw that away and took the remaining dagger.
The Baruka's dagger, eh?
Not only did it feature high-ranking power, but it also raised his agility too. On that front alone, there was no need to compare it to Nightkiller, a dagger ranked B he paid handsomely for, never mind the rank C Poison Fang of Kaseka. Its rarity alone was at A too. This was probably one of the best weapons to replace the Poison Fang of Kaseka that had been losing its effectiveness lately. I like the way it feels in my hand too. While he was mulling over the things that happened inside the Red Gate, they had arrived before Song Yi's home. She had been sitting in the passenger seat without saying a word, as if she wasn't even there in the first place. As soon as the van came to a stop, she climbed out of the seat and bowed her head.
Drive safely.
I will. Good night.
Song Yi turned around to leave. Seeing her slumped shoulders and powerless gait, it seemed that the original goal of this trip had been met, one way or the other.
Well, although things did get a lot complicated, I was trying to change your mind anyway.
It was rather likely that you wouldn't try to become a hunter in the future. It'd be the same story for anybody if their first dungeon experience just so happened to be a Red Gate. He nodded his head in satisfaction and was about to start the van again, but then the passenger's side was abruptly opened from the outside. Jin shifted his gaze. Song Yi had returned to the van and was holding on to the door.
What's the matter with her?
His curiosity only lasted for a little while. Song Yi bowed her head deeply again, this time looking much calmer than before.
Thank you for everything, Oppa.
He only now realized that from some time ago, the honorific she used to address him changed from Ajusi to Oppa.
Sure thing. Don't mention it.
Excuse me?
Hmm?
Tomorrow? No, see you later.
Later. Before she could ask her for clarification, Song Yi hurriedly ran away. After her back disappeared from his view, did he realize what she was talking about. From today onwards, he'd be teaming up with Jin-Oh again to mop up the rest of the raids. Song Yi was a raid team member, so of course they'd see each other again later on.
So she meant that, huh?
What a relief that was, though. His plan would have been affected pretty badly if Song Yi refused to come out of her house because of the trauma from this incident.
This worked out for the best.
And now he would use his shadow soldiers to clear out the Rank C dungeons even faster than before. He felt utterly confident of clearing up the remaining raids in the shortest time possible. Also, he couldn't wait to see how Jin-Oh would react after witnessing his shadow soldiers in action, too.
The reactions of that man Ki Chong were really priceless, weren't they?
Jin chuckled softly and leisurely turned the steering wheel. The next morning. Jin yawned grandly as he stepped out of the apartment's foyer. He only closed his eyes for a bit, but heck, it was time to meet up with Jin-Oh already. Young Nim, good morning! He heard the familiar, energetic voice greeting him. Jin-Oh was already here waiting.
You don't even have a car, so how did you get here?
The raid team's favorite ride, Mr. Van, had been commandeered by Jin last night and was currently parked neatly in the apartment's parking lot nearby. I caught a taxi, Young Nim.
Ah, a taxi.
And here he was, thinking of going to fetch the kid instead. Oh no, it's fine, Young Nim. I'm the one asking for your help, so it's only right that I'm the one driving you around at least. Jin-Oh grinned happily and replied. This morning started like any other. However, Jin-Oh discovered something new, and that was a cylindrical something held in Jin's hand. Jin-Oh's curiosity piqued in an instant. Young Nim, what is that?
This?
Jin grinned mysteriously.
I'm going to use it inside the dungeon today.
Suddenly, the chill invaded Jin-Oh's back.
Is it a weapon he's going to use inside the dungeon?
Young Nim had already displayed many extraordinary things before. Just what kind of a horrifying weapon was he bringing to a dungeon today, then? Jin-Oh was getting pretty psyched up already. Jin-Oh swallowed his dry saliva. We are literally getting dried saliva comments every single chapter, aren't we? But that's 6. Jin-Oh swallowed his dry saliva and raised his head after finally settling his mind. Young Nim, let's get going.
Hold on.
Jin pulled out his phone and dialed someone.
There's someone we should take along as well.
Excuse me? Who?
Hey, Song Yi. It's me. Meet us at the parking lot. We'll go to the gate together.
Song Yi? Could it be that Song Yi? As soon as Jin ended the call, Jin-Oh asked him, Young Nim, the person you want to take with us, is she that high schooler in our team? Jin nodded his head. Song Yi lived near here, and their destination was the same, so there wasn't any reason to go there separately now, was there? Unfortunately, Jin-Oh didn't see it that way. Han Song Yi, the rather cute high school girl with her hair tied up in a bun. He already knows her number, and can talk to her in such a friendly manner, too. Could young Nim and her have formed a much deeper relationship than meets the eye? For sure, young Nim was a cool guy even from another man's perspective. Especially when he uses nothing but a dagger to totally rip apart a monster. While young Nim wouldn't be interested at all, it'd not be a strange thing for an impressionable schoolgirl to fall for a man like that. Jinno nodded his head. If that was the case, then there was something he had to make sure right away. Young Nim, should I call Miss Han's sister-in-law from now on?
Did this guy fall off the bed and hit his head or something?
Jin's crumpled expression was inexplicably implying that. Even if Jinno was not too quick on the uptake, he should still be able to figure that one out pretty easily. You two aren't dating?
She's a friend of my little sister.
Oh. So, that's what happened. Jinno finally understood the situation. He didn't even know what was going on, yet he was thinking of calling that girl his sister-in-law. His face reddened up considerably. Soon enough, Song Yi came to the parking lot. Not only that, she was noticeably better dressed than how she was usually. Seeing this, Jinno grinned slightly. Yup, she's definitely a teen girl, wanting to look nice in front of the brother of her friend and all. As the leader of the raid team, he was thinking of praising the fellow raid team member's choice of wardrobe, but then Jin greeted her first.
Did you get some sleep?
In that instant, Jinno's expression froze stiff. Song Yi smiled and shook her head.
I couldn't catch a wink.
I'm sure you're still exhausted, so get some rest in the van.
Listening to the two people's conversation, the thought process of Jinno became more and more messed up. Song Yi asked Jin this time.
What about you, Oppa? Did you get some sleep?
Well, only for a little bit. It was already 4 a.m. by the time I got back home, anyway.
Well, true that.
Night? Couldn't catch a wink? Still exhausted? 4 a.m. by the time you got back home? Just as Jinno's panicked state was morphing into a full-blown freakout, Jin stopped walking towards the van and looked back at him.
What are you doing, Jinno?
Well, young Nim? Well, the thing is, Miss Han Sung Yi is still a minor, young Nim.
Okay. So?
Never mind, young Nim. Truly now, young Nim was a man among men. Jinno was deeply impressed by Jin, who didn't care about the glares of the public and thought that, indeed, he's extraordinary. He also began to reflect on his foolish ways of trying to apply the standards of the regular people on young Nim. Around the same time, inside the private conference room of the White Tiger Guild,
That's everything I saw.
Park Hui-jin finished her report. Although Baek Yoon-ho tried to dissuade her, saying that she should rest up first, she readily agreed to participate in the debriefing right away. She added that her stay over there was comfortable? Comparatively speaking. The two men who sat through the debriefing, the guildmaster Baek Yoon-ho and the section chief Han Sung-min, were left utterly speechless. The agent in charge of yesterday's disastrous training, Hyung Ki-cheol, was not present, currently in the Hunters Association to discuss how to handle the fallout from this incident. So, there were only 3 people inside this conference room. Han Sung-min was the first one to break the silence. Everything you told us, are they all true?
You can speak to Go Myung-hwan and Yu Ki-chung. They will corroborate everything I've said.
Those 2 hunters went home right away, saying they missed their families. Hui-jin was 100% certain that her testimony and theirs would not be any different.
Well, I only described the things I saw, after all.
Such as, when that man wasn't around, she'd hear the pitiful screams of ice bears every now and then coming from the forest some distance away. Or such as, when he'd suddenly wake up in the middle of the night to perform push-ups while everyone was fast asleep. She didn't bother to talk about things other hunters might have experienced, those that she didn't get to see.
Huh.
Yes, you are definitely right, Kitty. This is why context is key. An Sungmin spat out a gasp that could either be a sigh or a groan. Jin knocked out cold a rank A hunter in one hit. He could use separate space magic freely, and most important of all, he controlled dozens of summoned creatures. Every one of those were unbelievable things to swallow. And even more shocking news than that was,
He had cleared the upper rank dungeon all by himself.
Baek Yoon-ho broke his silence and said that sentence word by word, syllable by syllable. He was qualified to say that because he was an S rank.
Now that is the most unbelievable thing out of all of them.
Sure, the summoned creatures fought alongside him, but then again, those summons weren't his comrades to begin with. No, they were simply a part of Sung Jinu's hunter's skill. In other words, it was pretty much the same thing as Jin clearing the dungeon alone.
Even if you're a really high-ranked hunter, clearing an upper-ranked dungeon by yourself is incredibly difficult.
Not only that, it was a red gate to boot. What if it was Baek Yoon-ho? Perhaps he might be able to solo a rank B red gate, albeit just briefly. This feat was only achievable because Sung Jinu was capable of summoning and controlling dozens of summons. Sung Min remained stupefied as he spoke up.
There's no doubt that he's a reawakened possessing an extremely rare skill.
Yoon-ho agreed.
It is already rare to see a hunter controlling a summoned creature, but he can control several tens of them.
While working as the S-rank hunter, Yoon-ho had met countless other capable hunters, and had talked to a lot of them too. But he had never, ever heard of such a skill before.
A reawakened possessing a rare skill that's on another dimension compared to every other rare skill.
Yoon-ho expressed his admiration once more. It was here that Sung Min thought of a question.
If we were to evaluate Mr. Sung Jinu's ability in monetary terms, how much could it possibly be?
Even Yoon-ho couldn't answer that. However, without a doubt, it didn't matter what Sung Jinu's current value was. As soon as he went through the reassignment test, his value would shoot up several times more. They needed to sign him up before that happened. The White Tiger Guild had already lost a rank A and several rank Bs through this incident. If they failed to secure the winning lottery ticket called Sung Jinu at this time, then the losses incurred would be rather too severe to just write them off.
I shall place my full trust in you, Chief An.
Yoon-ho's eyes gleamed in the light of faith. Sung Min formed a dignified expression. It was then. The gazes of Yoon-ho and Sung Min were directed to Hui Jin. She had her hand raised slightly. Yoon-ho asked her,
Is there something you'd like to ask?
Succeeding in her mission to draw the attention of the two men, she lowered her hand and spoke.
Please, allow me to participate.
In what?
The recruiting of the raid team leader. No, I mean Sung Jinu hunter name.
Yoon-ho and Sung Min exchanged glances for a bit before looking back at her. The person in charge of scouting and recruitment, Sung Min, tilted his head.
But why would Park Hui Jin hunter name?
I've spent the most amount of time with Sung Jinu hunter name out of everyone in the White Tiger Guild, so surely my familiarity with him would prove to be useful in reeling him in.
It had been 6 hours in reality, but inside the Red Gate it was almost a week. Hui Jin's suggestion sounded logical from Baek Yoon-ho's and Sung Min's point of view. On top of this, Hui Jin was a beauty as well. One could say that the power of a beautiful face was absolute when seducing another person. Sensing that the thoughts of the guildmaster and the section chief had been swayed, Hui Jin finally got to the main topic.
However, I have a condition.
Yunho asked her.
And what could that be?
When Sung Jinu Hunternin signs up with our guild, please place me in his raid team. No questions asked.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of chapter 65. We have officially reached the halfway mark, and this is where I'm going to take my break. Perfect timing because the dogs need to go outside. While I'm taking that break, taking care of them, that'll be the break. But once I come back, we'll pick up with chapter 66. And of course, as you know, I will cut out this the air time in between my breaks, so that way it's seamless for those who watch this VOD later on. But for now, we're going on break. Back in a little bit, folks. It won't be too long. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am prepared to continue. Let me just double check something. Double check and make sure everything's good. But yeah, we are ready to continue with the remaining chapters. Thank you for being so patient. The dogs have been completely taken care of. Ain't got to worry about them for a while. We can continue uninterrupted. Onwards to chapter 66! Hui Jin had realized something back then, and that would be the level of terror an upper-ranked dungeon could possess. And how powerless she was in front of such overwhelming odds.
It's like I'm the one who ended up learning what Mr. Sung Jinu wanted to teach Song Yi.
It was kind of embarrassing, but what could she do? Pretending that terrifying things weren't terrifying was an excuse in foolhardiness and stupidity. The experiences she had back in the Red Gate were enough to make her skin crawl. However, just because of her fear, she couldn't give up on all the sweet treatment and the status enjoyed by a rank B hunter. The sky-high annual salary, the plentiful societal benefits, and finally, the public recognition. I love leaving these little flubs in there because it adds some flavor to these overall readings. And finally, the public recognition. If one regarded the inherent danger, then being a hunter was pretty much the perfect career. Precisely because of the high risk factor, the return on investment was equally huge. But now, Park Hui-jin had figured out a surefire way to decrease the risk associated with her job.
And that is to go on a raid together with the team leader Sung Jinu.
The one person Hui-jin was utterly envious of back in the Red Gate dungeon was none other than Hong Sung-yi. There was only one reason for that, and that would be the promise Jin made towards Song-yi. If you analyze those words in a different way, then he was trying to say that he had no reason whatsoever to protect other team members besides Song-yi. No, they were just baggage. So, she was constantly worried that those two folks would abandon the group and sneak away unnoticed. But on the 6th day, Jin really did clear the upper rank dungeon all by himself and took Song-yi home safe and sound. He had kept his promise. Seeing that, Hui-jin became sure of one thing, and that would be, as long as she was working for him during the raids, she'd never find herself in danger. The moment she realized this, her heart began pounding uncontrollably, and the level of her excitement hadn't cooled off even until now. His calm and cold decision-making, his excellent abilities, and not only that, his sense of responsibility, too. She really wanted to go on a raid together with Jin. That was why she came up with that term of hers.
They must put me in the team leader Sung Jinu's raid team. No questions asked.
Yoon-ho and Song-min chatted to each other, and a little bit later,
We accept your terms.
Yoon-ho smiled genially. Let me take a sip of water here. I forgot to do that before I unmute it. Good to go.
In that case, Miss Park Hui-jin, act together. Oh, wait.
In that case, Miss Park Hui-jin, act together with Chief Han for the time being.
Thank you very much, sir.
However, she was well aware that scouting that man wouldn't be easy. Jin was more than well aware of his own true worth, after all.
Even during the Red Gate, he was always so full of confidence.
Indeed, making him move would be one heck of a challenge.
Still,
She now had another chance to meet him again. And an imperceptible smile formed on Hui-jin's lips. Yun-ho was pondering something until then before opening his lips in some difficulty.
Chief Han,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know Mr. Sung Jinu's contact details.
Guildmaster, that is...
Song-min decided to tell everything regarding on why he had to conceal the matters regarding Jin until now. Yun-ho wordlessly listened to it and gravely nodded his head.
It's understandable that he wishes to remain anonymous, what with him possessing such incredible abilities. After all, there are enough people in this world who wish to stay out of the limelight too.
But then, such a guy did reveal his powers in front of quite a few eyewitnesses. Sure, the situation back then might have been urgent, but it was also likely that he felt more or less okay about letting the world know of his powers.
As long as the matter isn't blown out of proportion, I'm sure Mr. Sung Jinu wouldn't blame you, Chief Han.
Song-min nodded his head. Of course, no one present in this room wished to leak this story beyond these walls. Never mind for Jin, it would not be a good thing for both the association and the White Tiger as well.
That's that, but...
Song-min was worried about something else, though. And that would be his boss rushing things and ending up screwing everything up because he didn't know of Sung Jinu's rather decisive character. He dearly wanted to prevent that, at least.
Sir, I think you directly contacting him is a bit...
Yun-ho quickly figured out what Song-min was trying to say here.
Don't worry. I'm not trying to contact him in regards to the recruitment.
Pardon me, but then why?
It's as Mr. Sung Jinu said last night.
Yun-ho realized something after listening to Hui-jin's debriefing. Jin was the White Tiger Guild's benefactor. He had saved 3 new recruits of the guild. Not only that, but he also took care of the Red Gate, thereby ensuring that the honor of the White Tiger wasn't tarnished. Even though the association's people made the blunder, just how bad would the impact on the guild's public image have been if this news got out and everyone learned of them losing almost all of their new recruits? Just imagining it gave Yun-ho nightmares. Enough to have a total freakout almost right there.
And there I was, trying to stop that person no matter what just to get to the bottom of the incident.
He could now understand the reason why the youth was feeling quite grumpy at that time. If he didn't know the circumstances, fine, but now that he knew, he simply had to do a certain thing as a living, breathing human being.
As the representative of the White Tiger Guild, I'd like to officially express my gratitude to Mr. Sung Jinu, and to properly apologize for yesterday's incident as well.
Ah, if that's what he means, then...
Song-min could understand now. With Yun-ho's straightforward, no-nonsense personality, he wouldn't bother Jin with the matter of recruitment under the pretext of thanking the youth. And, well, he also wanted to convey his gratitude as well.
I understand.
Song-min pulled his phone out and found Jin's numbers rather quickly.
What is his number?
Yun-ho also pulled his own phone out to save the contact number. It was then...
his number is...
Just as Song-min was about to read the phone number, he felt something was off and turned his head to his side.
Excuse me? What are you doing, Parter Han Hui Jin Unternehmen?
Well,
With an awkward smile on her face, Huijin sneakily hid her phone away, its screen still displaying add new contacts. Inside the #1 guild in Korea, the Hunters. A rather interesting piece of news found its way to the owner of the Hunters and the currently active Rank S Hunter, Choi Jong-in. Has this been confirmed? Would anyone knock on their boss's door with unconfirmed information? Chief of the recruitment department, Jo Myung-ki, nodded his head. Yes, sir. We received this info earlier today from the association. Every major guild had 1 or 2 informants inside the association. It might not be a kosher thing to do, but this was the only way to stay one step ahead of the competition, contacting an existing new talent first if one were to emerge out of nowhere. However, earlier today, the Hunter's informant had leaked a pretty strange story, and after lengthy deliberation, Jo Myung-ki decided to come to his boss's office with this news. Why? Because the White Tiger Guild is on a roll nowadays, and they are large enough to threaten us, the Hunters. So he figured out that this information was worth reporting to the boss man. Exactly as Myung-ki had suspected, Choi Jong-in displayed great interest in the matter right away. From a red gate that killed 1 rank A and 6 rank Bs, 2 rank Cs returned alive. Not only that, they managed to clear the dungeon too. That is pure nonsense. Even if there was 1 rank B among them, there was no way that this was true. Jong-in shook his head as he continued to read the memo. Read the memo? What is with that accent there? Memo? To continue to read the memo. Without a doubt, there was someone else helping them out. Someone not mentioned in here. Choi was certain of this. His extensive experiences in raiding dungeons told him as so. Myung-ki replied, "Looks like the association also suspects that, sir. However, it seems that the White Tiger isn't saying anything." So, is the association planning to overlook it then? I heard that they don't want to conflate the matters any further, since it's their fault in this incident. Since their fault in this incident is already too significant. Sorry, I kept adding a word there for some reason. Since their fault in this incident is already too significant, sir. Choi rested his hand against his chin. It was a habit of his whenever he fell into deep thought. It was understandable from the association's point of view, but why was the White Tiger keeping quiet on this matter? There could be only one reason. The White Tiger must have received help from someone that they don't want others to know about. I also thought the same thing, sir. The opinions of the 2 people present matched. Choi's brain rapidly kicked into gear. A nameless helper who can rescue lower-ranked hunters from a dungeon that's difficult enough to kill most of the higher-ranked hunters. He could barely hold himself back from the curiosity now. A newbie who hasn't gone through the rank assessment test, or maybe a convict whose identity can't be revealed. Either case was okay with him. If it was a newbie, then the hunters must bring that person to their fold. If it was a convict, on the other hand, then he'd be able to throw some mud in the White Tiger's direction. Choi's eyes began sparkling. Looks like we need to find out who was there. Have you thought of a good way, sir? If you want to catch a hidden raccoon, you have to set the raccoon's hole on fire first. Myung-ki's eyes grew extra wide. Are you planning to set the White Tiger Guild on fire? You think I'm crazy? Why would I set someone else's perfectly fine organization on fire? My apologies, sir. Since you are such an excellent magic-type hunter and all, His nickname wouldn't be the ultimate weapon for no reason. Now would it? If Choi got serious and used his powers in full, then blowing up a building would be as easy as pie. In any case, Choi continued on. Not that. We just have to create a hot mess.
So it was fire.
When Choi began glaring at his underling, Myung-ki hurriedly shut his mouth. We leaked this to the media.
That is...
Myung-ki's eyes widened. The big mistake of the Hunters Association, a massacre of the large guild's members, and finally the ensuing mystery that got buried underfoot. The media just loves that kind of stuff. Wouldn't you agree? Myung-ki's head automatically went up and down in a nod. Choi chuckled slyly. Once they get bombarded by the nonstop barrage from the media, the White Tiger will grow too fed up and in the end reveal the identity of this mystery helper.
So there was a method like that.
Myung-ki also began smiling as well. This was a great chance to sucker punch the persistent White Tiger that dared to chase after the Hunters Guild. The ends of Choi's lips arched up. Call the reporters right away.
You have entered a dungeon.
As soon as he stepped foot inside the dungeon, Jin took in a deep breath. After being confined to an open field-type dungeon for a few days, the air inside the cavern-type dungeon felt new and refreshing. Jinno followed him into the dungeon soon afterwards. Young Nim, I wonder just what kind of monsters would come out in this dungeon.
Yeah, me too.
I can sense their presence close by, though. Indeed, they were quite close, but they couldn't spot any. But when Jin took one step forward, the floor of the cave began rising up here, there, and everywhere.
Grumble, rumble.
Humanoid monsters with skin made out of stone appeared. Jinno quickly recalled their name. Young Nim, it's the Stone Men! Jin nodded his head. These bastards were known to possess the toughest exterior out of all the monsters that appeared within lower-ranked dungeons. Common sense was to use magic when one was to hunt down a stone man, but...
Hold this for me, will ya?
Jin entrusted the cylindrical vinyl package to Jinno and walked towards the monsters. Ah! Jinno flinched grandly, thinking that the contents was a weapon, but nothing particularly noteworthy happened. It wasn't a weapon? Meanwhile, Jin stood before the stone men and summoned both the Baruka's dagger and Nightkiller.
Slice!
In the blink of an eye, the head of the stone man in the front of the pack rolled to the ground. Jin looked at the Baruka's dagger and smiled in satisfaction.
It's pretty good.
Then, suddenly, the smiling Jin disappeared from the spot.
Tap.
Just as Jin reappeared past the group of the stone men, all 10 plus of them collapsed to the ground.
Rumble. Crash!
My body has gotten a step lighter and faster after the Red Gate thing, hasn't it? But of course it would have. His current level was 60. His level had risen up by 9 from 51 after killing all those ice bears and the White Phantoms. And now the rank C monsters felt like those goblins from the rank E dungeon to him.
At this rate, I don't even need to use my weapons.
Now that he had warmed up nicely,
should I increase the hunting speed then?
Time to summon his shadow soldiers. With an excellent timing, another group of stone men was slowly lumbering towards his position from the deeper part of the cave.
Summon.
As soon as he issued an order, the soldiers confined to Jin's shadow rapidly revealed themselves behind him. And sure enough, there was a loud scream accompanying that. Oopsie. Jin facepalmed and turned around.
I forgot he was here with me.
He got way too excited and completely forgot about Jinno for a moment there. Young Nim! While plopped on his behind, Jinno pointed his trembling finger at the shadow soldier standing right in front of him. What are these?
It's a bit complicated to explain. Well, it's my skill.
You can summon these things as your skill? Jin nodded his head. Jinno's jaw remained slack and didn't want to close. Him and young Nim had entered dungeons together 11 times already. He thought that he wouldn't get shocked anymore, but he was proven wrong once more. As expected, young Nim was an existence that easily exceeded one's imagination. Jinno laboriously swallowed his saliva. 7. As his eyes took on the black armored soldiers emitting a blood-chilling aura. Meanwhile, Jin shifted his gaze away. The lumbering stone men had already arrived near their vicinity. Jin pointed at them with his chin. Go. As if they were waiting for that, the soldiers silently rushed forward. Rummer. The floor of the cave shook hard as the 40-odd armored soldiers all ran at the same time. For sure, with the addition of Iron and the Beast soldiers, the overall weight of the group had increased by a lot. It's like I'm looking at a fleet of tanks, isn't it? Jin formed a very satisfied expression. What with the shadow soldiers sweeping through everything, the dungeon got cleared in the proverbial blink of an eye. The only things remaining on the floor were the scattered and broken bits of stone men that resembled cookies made out of dirt. A rank C dungeon was destroyed in no time at all, in other words. Oh, Jin exclaimed in admiration. At this rate, we might get to mop up the rest of the raids pretty quickly, no? It seemed that the remaining 8 raids would not take that long to finish up. As soon as the battle ended, the shadow soldiers retrieved the magic crystals and stood before Jin in orderly columns. Igris and Iron stood in front of them. The 2 knights stepped to the front and knelt down. Once the soldiers stopped moving, Jinno finally sneaked in closer to Jin's side. Young Nim, here. He then returned the mystery vinyl package back to Jin. Jin wordlessly took out the tumbler contained with the vinyl package and began sucking on the strong. I almost said strong with an N. Jin wordlessly took out the tumbler and contained with the vinyl pack and began sucking on the straw. Young Nim, what is that? It's veggie juice. Oh. I kinda like its taste, actually. After he almost completely drained the tumbler, Jin asked Jinno, Hey, Jinno, how many gates did you book today? Jinno was in the middle of cautiously reaching out to touch the fur of one of the beast soldiers, but he quickly pulled his hand back and turned back to Jin. 4 gates, young Nim. With 4 today, only 5 would remain. He didn't see any reason to waste any more time than this. In that case, let's finish up everything by tomorrow. It doesn't matter if a gate is a bit far away anyway. You mean tomorrow? Inexplicably, Jinno took a look around him. Seeing all the broken wreckage of stonemen littering the floor, he couldn't help but slowly nod his head. For sure. With this kind of speed. Understood, young Nim. By the way... Jinno hesitated slightly before opening his mouth with some difficulty. Can I be the one to retrieve the magic stones? Why? I'm kind of upset because it feels like my role's been stolen by these guys, young Nim. Jin burst out in a soft chuckle. Yup, this kid really is a weird one. And a day later, Jin finished the 19 raids he had promised Jinno. And that is the end of Chapter 66. Onwards to Chapter 67. Chapter 67. Young Nim, now that the raids are over, how about we celebrate with a hearty meal? As they were driving back, Jinno cautiously asked. Celebrate? But there's no one with us, though. The raid team was disbanded as soon as the last raid was completed. Even Song Yi said that she had someplace she had to stop by, so there were only Jin and Jinno in the van. Jinno spoke as if he was embarrassed by something. I've been receiving your help all this time, young Nim, so I just wanted to treat you to a good meal at least. Why was he having so much trouble saying the words, let's have a meal together? Jin chuckled wryly. Since the kid was implying that he wanted to splurge on a grand feast, there was no reason for Jin to refuse the invitation, now was there? All right. Jin-O's expression brightened considerably as soon as Jin said okay. Young Nim, should I take you to this restaurant in a certain hotel that I know? They know how to make a mean steak, you see? No, not something like that. Unless such dishes came out in public engagements he simply had to attend, Jin would rather prefer to eat a simpler meal in peace with Jin-O in an easygoing, relaxed atmosphere. What a good timing it was, since he spotted one such place that fit the criteria. The tip of Jin's pointing finger pressed on the van's window. How about that place over there? Ah, you wanted to enjoy Hwanyu, young Nim? That means Korean beef. Hwanwu? Hwanwu. Ah, you wanted to enjoy Hwanwu, young Nim? No, the place next to that one. Jin-O's eyes narrowed to a slit. A restaurant next to that one. He could only see a common diner there. Day of flour blooming on pork belly. Thinly sliced pork belly specialist. By any chance, are you talking about that pork belly place, young Nim? What? You don't like pork? Jin-O grinned refreshingly. Not at all. I also love pork belly, young Nim. They parked the van in the nearby parking lot and went inside the diner, only to find the place was parked to the brim with patrons as well as part-time workers busy moving around without a moment of rest. Right now, it was 7 in the evening. No wonder the dinner was so full.
Welcome. How may I help you?
Sorry, I was responding to something. Yo, Roet, what's going on? Hey, Kyushu Turtle Me is releasing a new novel in November, Soul Forge. I recommend reading it when it comes out. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Welcome. How may I help you?
I'll get rid of that pause in between me checking a message there for a moment as well. I'll get rid of that too.
Welcome. How may I help you?
One of the part-time workers walked over with a smile and engaged the two men.
How many customers will we be serving this evening?
Us two.
Please follow me.
After hearing us two.
Please follow me.
After hearing Jin-O's answer, the part-time worker guided the two men to a spot in the secluded corner. However, hold on for a second. Jin-O took a look around and pointed towards the empty table by the windows. Can't we sit over there?
I'm sorry, sir. That table has been booked already.
A large group must have made a booking because several tables had been brought together. Currently, they were all empty. Jin-O stared at the empty tables with a rueful expression and shook his head. In the end, the two of them had to occupy the most secluded, out-of-the-way spot in the diner. Jin-O lowered his head in shame. I'm sorry, young Nim. There's nothing for you to apologize for. I was the one who suggested that we come here anyway. Even still, I should have taken you to a bit better spot than this one. Jin smirked and lightly patted Jin-O on the shoulder. Don't sweat over such things and enjoy the food, okay? Actually, Jin was inwardly worried about a scion of a chaebol finding the taste of such cheap meat to his liking or not. Also, even though I didn't say anything, but, well... Jin scanned his surroundings. He could see people and then more people. He spent quite a lot of time in a silent apartment with no one in it, so he kind of enjoyed this hustle and bustle.
Here are your orders of 3 portions of pork belly and 2 bottles of soju.
Soon, the part-time worker brought out their orders. The thinly sliced portions of pork sizzled enticingly on the heating plate, and sure enough, pieces of meat began disappearing real fast. Fortunately enough, Jin-O seemed to like it. Well, the thing is, me and my friends frequent pork belly dinners whenever we have the chance, young Nim. Oh, really? Friends from the university? Yes, young Nim. It's just that I seem to mix better with friends from my university rather than the classmates from the expensive private schools I went to. Jin smirked slightly and nodded his head. If it was Jin'o, then that sounded about right.
Here, let me pour you a glass, young Nim.
Yeah, you too. They filled their glasses with soju, clinked them a little, and one-shotted them.
Yeah.
Unlike Jin'o, who was immensely enjoying the bitter taste of soju, Jin could only frown deeply in unhappiness.
Young Nim, is something wrong?
No, it's nothing. Jin could only stare at the empty glass with a bitter expression on his face. He had forgotten one crucial fact about his body, what with him being so busy lately and all.
Harmful substances have been detected. Effects of buff detox will now commence. 3, 2, 1. Detoxification has been completed.
I forgot that I can't get drunk anymore. Darn. It was the same story regardless of how many glasses he knocked back. As long as the buff good health and long life was in effect, soju would remain as only slightly bitter-tasting water and nothing more. Jin angrily spat out a cuss in his mind. Darn it. Rather than drinking bitter water like an idiot, he decided that it'd be infinitely better to order a soda instead. Excuse me. A part-time worker hurriedly came over to this table. I want to order 2 more portions of pork belly, as well as a bottle of Sprite, please.
Okay, please wait for a moment.
After the waiter left, Jin'o began tilting his head.
Young Nim, why didn't you order more alcohol?
I'm not that good with alcohol, you see. Jin replied, his expression not even changing slightly. But as usual, Jin'o didn't quite catch that. Instead, a loose smile crept up on his alcohol-tinged reddened face.
Young Nim still has a humane side like this one.
Jin'o kept on giving him a strange but meaningful look, but Jin simply ignored him outright. It's not as if he started acting strange all of a sudden just today or anything. Actually, he was getting curious about something else. Oh wait, it's not as if he started acting strange all of a sudden just today or anything. Actually, he was getting curious about something else here. What are you planning to do from now on? When Jin asked in a serious voice, Jin'o sat upright like a job seeker waiting for his job interview to start. As soon as I complete a simple written test at the Hunters Association, they should issue my guildmaster license right away, young Nim. I'm planning to negotiate with my father with that license in hand. Determination flooded in Jin'o's eyes. He had invested a lot of his own moolah for this purpose, and there was no room to retreat now. Besides, I also made a promise with young Nim, too. The guild building he promised to Jin. That part of the bargain could be upheld only after Jin'o successfully persuades his father, Yu Myung-hwan, to install him as the new guild master. On the other hand, Jin was feeling rather liberated. Sure, it'd be nice to get my hands on that 30 billion won building. But, well, that would only be an added bonus to him. His real purpose had always been leveling up. While entering all those rank C gates, he had reached a far higher level than he initially bargained for. In other words, he had achieved his goal. And the results of his frantic leveling up spree? One punch from him, and the rank A hunter with a guaranteed annual salary of billions of won, Ki Chio, lost his consciousness, just like that. At the bare minimum, I can make more money than that guy now. If one possessed excellent abilities, wealth was sure to follow. There was no need to feel nervous at all, and his relaxed mindset could clearly be seen on his demeanor. Jin began reminiscing about the last few days and smiled to himself. It was at that moment Jin'o asked him a question.
What are your plans now, young Nim?
Oh, me? Did I ask something I shouldn't? Jin'o thought like this and flinched slightly, but he breathed a sigh of relief after spotting Jin's relaxed expression. I'll be out of reach for a while, actually. There's this place I have to go to, you see. That one sentence caused Jino's face to harden visibly. After forming an expression of an abandoned puppy, Jino emptied the soju glass in one go. Tap. He then placed the empty glass on the table, filling it up back to the brim. After knocking back another glass, he began to open his mouth with some difficulty. Young Nim, please tell me straight if I've been bothering you. If that's been the case, I shall make sure to never bother you again in the future.
This idiot.
The moment Jin said that he'd been out of reach, this idiot must have misunderstood his words again. Jin scratched the side of his head and asked a question instead of a proper reply.
Hey, Jino.
Yes, young Nim?
What do you think of me as?
Well, Jin's eyes rolled around this way and that as if he couldn't come up with a good enough answer, before he raised his head. Young Nim, I have a brother who's over 10 years older than me. Jin remembered hearing that from somewhere. The firstborn son of Yu Myung-hwan, Yu Jin-song. My brother doesn't really like me, so I think the time I spent with him is far shorter than what I've spent with you, young Nim. Compared to him, you've saved my life, helped me out with my dream, and... Jino stared straight at Jin. To me, you're more like my real brother than him, young Nim. He was still a bit scared of Jin, though. Still, he'd never, ever forget these past few days following around Jin for the rest of his life. Indeed, his respect was far greater than fear of Jin at this point.
If you see me as your brother, then,
Jin smiled deeply.
I'll think of you as my younger brother as well.
Yeah, young Nim. The tip of Jino's nose reddened and he began to get teary-eyed all of a sudden. If that was all, it had been fine, but then he tried to get closer to Jin out of nowhere. Young Nim, I want to give you a big hug. It's fine, right?
Hey, you're drunk, dude. Stop it.
No, that's not true. Young Nim, I've never been this clear-minded in my whole life before. Young Nim!
Say that with your eyes open, will you?
Either he was far too moved by his emotions, or he was just a bad drunk. Jino collapsed over the table and began crying his eyes out, prompting Jin to pat him on the shoulder. Soon enough, Jin fell asleep and the table had quieted down now.
What a helpless kid.
Jin leaned back on his seat and lightly clicked his tongue. Yu Jino. He was a troublesome kid in many ways, but for some reason, Jin didn't find him dislikable at all. Jin heard that voice and shifted his gaze over to its source. A TV mounted on the wall of the diner was showing a news bulletin.
Is it 9 in the evening already?
He thought like that and stared at the screen, only to spot someone rather familiar appearing there.
Huh?
Jin's eyes widened. It was none other than Baek Yoon-ho, and he was being bombarded with an unending stream of questions from the reporters as he exited from the White Tiger's headquarters.
Is it true that there was a huge incident during the training of your new recruits? Is it also true that only the lower-ranked hunters returned alive while all the higher-ranked ones had perished?
What do you think about the rumor of a mystery person allegedly aiding the survivors during this incident?
Yoon-ho was doing his best to ignore the reporters, but in the end, he had no choice but to respond.
This incident has been investigated by the association already. It was true that there was an incident, but there was no mystery helper at the scene. No, the White Tiger Guild's proud hunters combined their powers and managed to clear the upper-ranked dungeon, and many hunters lost their lives or got injured during the process. That is all.
Another reporter quickly fired in a follow-up question.
If that's the case, why are you forbidding us from interviewing the survivors?
Those folks have managed to avoid death's doorstep by a hair's breadth. So why do you wish to speak to those people regarding this deeply traumatic event? That's as far as I'm prepared to answer you people.
Yoon-ho made a quick getaway from there after climbing into a car. Jin's eyes remained wide open.
They were talking about me, right?
a little while ago, somewhere in the eastern United States of America. A shrill scream exploded out inside a certain dungeon. A hunter named James plopped down on his butt. His legs had lost all strength and he could only crawl on the floor to run away. But when he realized that he only managed to corner himself against a wall, despair quickly dyed his expression. Oh dear God! The rank for this dungeon was estimated to be A, and in order to clear this gate, suitable hunters were recruited to form a raid team. However, every single one of them was annihilated. Technically speaking, they weren't dead but unconscious on the floor, though. I can't believe this! James leaned against the wall and breathed heavily before roughly shaking his head around several times. Today had been a series of truly unforgettable events. When the raid team entered the dungeon, they could not find a single monster because there was seemingly no monster inside. A dungeon without monsters? Can such a thing even exist? If that was the case, where did the magic power emission that the measuring equipment had picked up outside the gate come from? The hunters came up with all sorts of theories by themselves. This was already a hard-to-believe phenomenon, yet something even more shocking was waiting for them by the boss's room. When they entered it, they did find a single monster, and it looked exactly like a human being. Indeed, there was only one, but from that monster's single attack, every raid team member lost their consciousness. This creature proved to be far, far too powerful for them. Okay, so we got some Conqueror's hockey users in this story. Only James had somehow escaped from the boss room. Wait, could it be that all the magic energy emission detected on the outside of the dungeon is coming from that thing alone? The measurement took place far away, from outside the gate itself, yet its magic power was already exceeding the level of a rank A. James shook his head again. That's just impossible! But then... This? Really now? That lone monster walked out from the darkness and stepped into the light. James began screaming once more after he saw the approaching creature. That hurts my ears, you know. The monster, no, an oriental man with long unkempt hair and a bushy beard roughly scratched the top of his head. James no longer screamed but began leaking out scared gasps instead. The mystery oriental man stood before James and placed his hands on his waist. What the heck? So who told you to attack first without warning? I told you that I'm not a monster but a human being. I'm a human. Unfortunately, James could not understand a single word of this strange language. Naturally, his complexion progressively worsened. The Oriental man stared at the terrified American hunter with a troubled expression on his face. Eventually, he spat out a long, long sigh. Dang it. What a pain trying to talk to these big-nosed foreigners. In any case, he tried to imitate another conversation one more time. He squatted down low enough to match the American's eye level and did his best to sound as friendly and non-threatening as possible. Hey, man. He could recall a few English words. With such a poor grasp in that language, he couldn't really tell if he was making any sense at all, grammar-wise. I am a Korean. So he tried to enunciate every word to the best of his ability. I want to go home. And that is the end of chapter 67, ladies and gentlemen. Onwards to chapter 68. We're still making some very good time today. Chapter 68. An event of an unprecedented scale. A trapped person walked out of a dungeon, alive. The U.S. Hunter Bureau went into overdrive right away. The deputy director of the Bureau personally came down to the interview room after hearing this news. Beyond the one-way mirror, he could see an Oriental man quietly sitting on a chair with a pair of handcuffs on his wrists. Do you see that man?
Yes, sir.
He looks like a regular civilian, doesn't he?
Yes, sir.
It was as he said. Once that man's unkempt hair and the messy beard were taken care of, his facial features would be that of an average middle-aged Oriental man commonly found everywhere. Have you found out his identity yet?
He has repeatedly stated that he's a Korean hunter.
South Korea?
Yes, sir.
How can a South Korean hunter come out of a dungeon on the other side of the world?
He says that he was trapped inside the dungeon for the past 10 years after the gate closed on him. And when he reopened his eyes, he's in America.
Reopened his eyes, he's in America. Is that it?
That's what he's been saying until now, sir.
The deputy director massaged his forehead. How was he to explain this to the director? He felt a migraine beginning its vicious assault on his head. If that's the case, then what are you guys waiting for? Why aren't you in there trying to get more information out of him? Never mind as the director, the deputy was worried about having to report directly to someone even higher than that. Or worse, someone much, much higher up the food chain. In other words, there was no time to wait around sucking on thumbs like this. Too bad. The section chief in charge of information did not share his sentiment.
Sir, we're currently focusing on the possibility of this man being a monster who possesses a human's memories instead.
Okay, so? If it suddenly reveals its true intentions during the interview process, the entirety of Washington could be in danger. That made sense. A raid team consisting of several Rank A hunters proved to be utterly helpless against that man, after all. They could not afford to be careless here. Looks like we'll have to get a powerful hunter to continue on with the investigation then. Preferably a Rank S, too. The section chief nodded his head in agreement. There is a Rank S hunter who can converse in Korean residing nearby. The deputy director's expression brightened. He was none other than the deputy director of the Hunter Bureau. He had memorized back to front the list of all Rank S husters. He had memorized back to front the list of all Rank S hunters living in the States already.
Mr. Huang, is he coming here?
Yes, sir. One of the main hunters of the Scavenger Guild, Huang Dong-soo. Just how much effort did the Hunter Bureau have to put in order to bring that man here and naturalize him as an American citizen? If it's him. Even if something bad did happen, it's not too much of a big problem. The deputy director smiled deeply. Oh, right. I almost forgot. A question belatedly formed in his head. If he were to make a report to the higher-ups, he'd at least need to know the subject's name. What was the name of that man? It was a difficult-to-pronounce name, that's for sure. The section chief confirmed it on the report submitted to him by one of his underlings and spoke up. His name is Song Il-hwan, a hunter from South Korea. Huang Dong-soo had no time for such things as mercy, especially if it was against monsters. He lost his parents to a dungeon break many years ago and grew up with only his older brother as a sole surviving family member. That was why when he awakened as a Rank S, he knew this was his heaven-sent opportunity.
The opportunity to rip apart and kill as many monsters as I can!
Perhaps that was the reason why the glare of Huang Dong-soo as he entered the interview room was icier than usual. A man who came from a dungeon, even the magic energy wavelength that this man emitted apparently had a similar pattern to that of a monster.
If a monster is pretending to be a human,
then he'd kill this abominable creature right here, right now. His glare met the man's gaze. They silently exchanged their gazes. Huang Dong-soo put the file with this man's information down on the table, pulled the chair out to sit, and opened his mouth.
It'll be better for you to cooperate with me. One word from me will determine how others will see you. A human or a monster. Got that?
Understood. Before he got started, though, a deeply personal question floated up in Huang Dong-soo's mind, in Huang Dong-soo's head. His older brother who died inside the dungeon. Was there any possibility that Huan Dong-suk could return alive? He wanted to know about that first.
Is there any chance of other hunters returning from a dungeon just as you have?
The man shook his head. Huan Dong-su's brows quivered just then.
How can you be so sure?
Because I'm well aware of the reason why I came back.
The reason? What is it?
Let me ask you something before I answer that.
I'll be the one asking questions here.
Huan Dong-su's eyes narrowed to a slit. However, the man continued on with what he wanted to say regardless. The gates, monsters, and dungeon breaks. How much do you know about them? If this man had asked a stupid question, Huang Dong-su might have used force to shut this man up right away. But he couldn't do that right now, because that question was something that countless tried to answer ever since the first gate appeared and awakened people began appearing 10 years ago. This very moment could be when the answer finally revealed itself.
Deputy Director, shh!
The agents of the Hunter Bureau all nervously swallowed their saliva. That's 8! As they stared into the one-way mirror. Huang Dong-su asked,
Are you saying that you know?
Dungeons, gates, monsters. All these are merely preludes to a true war about to happen soon. And recently, a being that will become the greatest calamity ever seen has opened its eyes.
So, the reason why you returned is...
in order to stop that calamity.
And what is, or who is, this greatest calamity ever seen?
That, I can't tell you. Dong-su smirked derisively.
A man who came here to stop a calamity can't talk about what it is. I don't know what that thing could be, but surely, rather than trying to stop it all by yourself, wouldn't it be better to work together with others?
The man shook his head. The number of people means nothing when facing this being. Doesn't matter whether lots of amateurs decide to work together or not. They will only become its prey and become its pawns instead.
So, are you saying that only you can stop it?
The man nodded his head. Dong-su inwardly clicked his tongue.
This guy's gone off the deep end.
It wasn't that hard to understand, though, if this man had been truly trapped inside a dungeon for 10 years. Or, alternatively, there had been some kind of an error, a mistake during the process of the monster trying to copy a human's memories, and consequently, its brain had melted somewhat. In any case, Dong-su decided to humor the other party for the time being and see where this thing would go.
You must be awfully confident of your skills, then.
Let's just say that besides my skills, I've other factors in my favor.
Well, if you say so.
Just what kind of information could he even extract from a madman? Dong-su decided to stop the questioning here. Instead, he opened the man's case file, thinking of finishing up the Bureau's request, which was to investigate the man's background.
Your name is Sung Il-hwan.
The photo supplied certainly matched the man's face.
Rather than 10 years ago, though, it's like only a couple of weeks, maybe months have passed by instead.
However, Dong-su decided not to mind it. He heard that high-ranked hunters could even skirt past the aging process.
Your records as a hunter look pretty good. You could have earned quite a lot of money these days.
Il-hwan didn't respond to that. Back then, there was no proper system of hunters in place. Heck, there wasn't a ranking system for hunters, even. Dong-su began reading the file.
Your spouse, Park Gyung-hui.
Park Gyung-hai?
Park Gyung-hai. 2 children. The son's name is...
As he read down the names of the children with no emotion on his face, Dong-su's eyes opened up slightly wider for a moment.
Sung Jinu.
But it only lasted for a truly brief second. Dong-su did his best to remain calm and continued on.
Sung Jinu. And the name of your daughter is?
Sung Jina.
Okay.
It happened then.
Wait,
Wait. Before Dong-su could flip to the next page, Il-hwan stopped him. Dong-su raised his head, and he found Il-hwan's glare had become as cold as his own. Why did you admit a murderous intent when mentioning the name of my son? Dong-su placed the file on the desk between them, and then killed the mic feed to the outside of the room.
I told you I'll be the one asking questions.
I'll have to hear your answer first.
What if I'm not interested in answering you?
I'll use force if necessary. Il-hwan's eyes began gleaming coldly. He didn't even show any hint of backing down, which prompted Dong-su to smirk deeply.
I got it. So you were a monster then.
How dare a measly little monster threaten a hunter? An intense hostility directed to him. Now that was enough of an evidence to label this man as a monster.
No, wait. This could be my second heaven-sent opportunity.
Dong-su decided as such and switched the mic on again.
Click. Beep.
Deputy Director, this guy is a monster. Evacuate immediately, because he might start attacking very soon.
Beep.
People panicking beyond the one-way mirror quickly ran out of the room, and soon a loud wail of a siren resounded within the building. Meanwhile, a silver light began emitting from Dong-su's hands.
I'm planning to visit South Korea soon.
After getting ready, Dong-su threw an insidious smile at Il-hwan.
So what last words from his father should I deliver to your son?
The TV was still talking about the Red Gate incident. Jin scratched the back of his head.
This thing is getting out of hand.
Still, he didn't feel all that troubled. It was like he felt a bit weird instead. He found it rather odd that some people who didn't even know anything about him were trying their darndest to find more about him. Especially when he wasn't even there. But what if they find out about him? Didn't matter, really.
Well, I already leveled up to the point I was aiming for anyway.
The reason why he decided to keep his abilities hidden in the beginning was that he had a lingering fear that he might end up being used by some unscrupulous bastards. But now, the story was different. Even when the guild master of the White Tiger, as well as an S-rank hunter, Baek-Yun-ho, had grabbed his arm, Jin could yank his arm free without a problem. He could yank his arm free without a problem. Sorry, I had to burp in the middle of that sentence there. That just messed things up for me. My apologies. Jin could yank his arm free without a problem. He wouldn't have even dreamed of achieving such a feat in the past.
Surely, I'd have wet myself just from meeting eyes with that man.
An imperceptible smile formed on Jin's lips. In times like this, he should have been enjoying the drunken bliss, with reminiscence serving as the perfect side dish. But then...
Ta-ding! Harmful substances has been detected. Effects of buff detox will now commence. 3, 2, 1. Detoxification has been completed.
What a regretful thing it was. His wish couldn't be granted. Jin smiled rather ruefully, but his facial expression became serious and determined, more than ever before as he put the soju glass down.
I don't have any plans to stop here, though.
Jin summoned his status window.
Ta-ding! Name, Sung Jinu. Level, 61. Class, Shadow Sovereign. Title, The One Who Overcame the Adversity. HP, 13,001. MP, 1,677. Tiredness, 0. Stats, Strength, 142. Endurance, 101. Agility, 121. Intelligence, 89. Perception, 103. Available stat points to distribute, 0. Reduction in physical damage, 46%.
His level was 61. Thanks to investing all of the points he earned via daily quests and intelligence, that stat was ever closer to the 100 mark.
I've got a long road ahead of me, though.
But he knew he could climb even higher, to an even higher place, to a place that possibly no one else could get to. That possibility made his heart palpitate. and the beginning of this climb would be at the demon's castle.
The system definitely said that's the one item I wanted more than anything else.
He recalled the time he got the blessed random box.
Blessed Random Box presents the player with the item he wants.
And he got the key to the instant dungeon Demon's Castle from it. The monster he ran into had a high level, and the rewards were top-notch, too. He had confirmed these two facts before exiting from there. He had no idea what might come out on the higher floors, but it'd not deviate too much. And so, it was now the time to go and reap his rewards. He was planning to enter there and spend a good few days inside. Jin's only worry was,
once I'm inside, I won't be able to contact the outside.
what should he tell his little sister then? Deciding to come up with a suitable excuse on his way back home, Jin got up from his seat.
Hey, Jinno.
You, Jinno. Jin shook and lightly tapped Jinno, but the kid had completely blacked out. What should he do now?
And he's supposed to go to the association tomorrow to take the written test, too.
Well, taking a test was one thing, but the most urgent thing to worry about right now was sending him home safely from here. Jin pulled out Jinno's phone. Obviously. Gotta go. Catch you guys tomorrow. Be safe. Be good. Be safe. Thank you, Kitty, for stopping by. I appreciate you, all the support you show. Thank you for being literally one of the best moderators I ever had. I've been meaning to tell you that for a while, but thank you for sticking around. You have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in whenever you're available, whenever I'm doing something else. But thank you. You take it easy.
Obviously, I can't call either the chairman Yu Myung-hwan or Yu Jin-seong.
Just who should he call here that would inflict the least amount of harm on Jinno? Jin pondered his choices before spotting a name on the contact list.
Soo-hyun?
Unlike with his father or his older brother, Jinno had exchanged quite a few messages with this person. It had to be a woman, judging from the name. Jin deliberated for a while on whether to call this woman or not, before putting the phone down.
Wait a minute.
He quickly confirmed his store just in case. And sure enough, there was a certain item he was thinking of. He found it.
Item: Status Recovery Potion. Rarity: E. Type: Consumable. A liquid potion that can recover one's status. Once consumed, undesirable status ailments will be cured. Can be stored in your inventory, but it cannot be handed over to someone else.
As soon as he confirmed the purchase, a yellow potion vial suddenly materialized on the top of the diner's table. It was of a noticeably brighter color than the healing potion's deep red color or the blue of the MP recovery potion. Jin took a look around him to make sure no one was looking before he quickly tipped Jinno's head over and poured the status recovery potion down the kid's throat. It was then Jinno's eyes snapped open.
Young Nim!
Are you awake now?
Jinno's head was tipped backwards, and Young Nim was staring down at him from above.
Young Nim, what are you doing here?
Jin couldn't come up with a good enough explanation right away. In times like these, pretending that nothing had happened was for the best.
Let's go.
Oh, yes, Young Nim.
Jinno stood right up from his seat before tilting his head slightly.
Why do I feel so refreshed?
Jinno moved his body this way and that before a refreshing smile formed on his face as he followed after Jin. And as they left the diner, the news continued on.
This is the next item on the bulletin. The American government has continued delaying releasing any official statement on the mysterious explosion that rocked the headquarters of the American Hunter Bureau.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 68. Onwards to Chapter 69. And then just one more after that, and we can call it a session for today. Chapter 69. On the first light of the day, Jin headed to the Daesung Tower.
It sure is really big.
Trying to look up at the top of this 100-floor tall skyscraper from nearby made his neck hurt.
But why are there so many people around here?
Unlike the last time, there were way too many people coming in and out of the tower. The difference in foot traffic between the nighttime and daytime was far too huge. Not only the building's entrance, but the street surrounding it was packed full as well.
It'll probably get real noisy if a person suddenly vanishes in a place with so many people in it, right?
Not only that, the media was casting a spotlight on this mystery helper or whatever, so there wasn't any reason for him to go out of his way and draw attention to himself, was there?
Obviously not.
Jin wasn't someone who enjoyed the attention to begin with. He made his way to an area with not much foot traffic and pulled out the key to the demon's castle from his inventory. It was a long, slender golden key. At a casual glance, it even resembled a fancy decorative item.
No one's around me, right?
After scanning his surroundings, Jin nodded his head.
Let's enter from here.
Jin activated his stealth skill. After vanishing from view, he returned to the main street and walked closer to the tower while brushing past the countless passers-by. As befitting the busy street in the middle of the city, and during the daytime no less, the distance he had to walk wasn't far, but he still ended up bumping into quite a few shoulders as he blended into the crowd. However, not one person noticed it.
If I were to abuse this stealth skill, I can do pretty much anything, no?
He even thought that this had to be the reason why high-ranking hunters possessing the stealth skill were closely monitored at all times. His aimlessly wandering mind didn't stay like that for long. Just like the first time he came here, the surrounding view suddenly transformed as soon as he stepped across the invisible boundary.
Rumble. I can already hear the sounds of flames burning from this far away. So just how hot is it in there?
The giant tower enveloped in flames, the demon's castle, replacing the Daesung Tower, filled up his entire view. Take a sip of water. The thing was, though, humans were supposedly capable of quickly adapting to their situations.
Well, it's not as bad as the first time.
For sure, he didn't feel as nervous as the first time he saw the demon's castle.
No, maybe. Maybe it's because I've leveled up sufficiently enough.
Jin stored the key to the demon's castle in his inventory and summoned an ash-colored key instead.
Item: Key to the castle's gate. Rarity: A. Type: Key. The key to unlock the gates of the demon's castle can be acquired only after killing the gatekeeper.
It was the key he got after killing the gatekeeper, the Cerberus. Back then, he didn't even dare to use it after getting almost bitten to death by the Cerberus. But now, he could use it. Then, he summoned his weapon. On his left hand, the key. On his right hand, the Baruka's dagger. Jin cautiously approached the front gate of the tower. He couldn't see the Cerberus.
Could it be that monsters don't respawn in the demon's castle?
He couldn't be sure, but there was some possibility that it might be, just like with the Cerberus.
In that case,
the layout of this dungeon could be very different from other instant dungeons where monsters always respawned. Jin expanded his perception to the limit. By expanding his perception stat that had broken past the 100 mark, he could even hear his own heartbeat beating as loudly as thunderclaps.
However, I'm not scared at all.
Unlike before, he was certainly feeling a lot more confident, knowing how strong he was currently. Maintaining his vigilance and shivering from fear were two different stories, after all.
Tring!
When he stood before the castle's gate, a new message popped up.
Will you use the key to the castle's gate to enter? Yes or no?
You think I'm going back home after coming this far?
Jin snorted at this nonsensical question and chose yes. He didn't even do anything, yet the huge pair of doors began moving as the hinges issued long, loud creaks.
Slam!
Slam! And I gave myself the hiccups. Jin was flustered next. He had had his perception expanded to the max, yet he couldn't sense a single presence of monsters from beyond the castle's gates. There are no monsters. Jin had been worried about precisely the opposite situation happening to him. He had even thought about going through a special training. Yep, I got hiccups. I gotta get rid of them. All right, they're gone. He had even thought about going through a special training by deliberately entering the penalty zone to fight against those desert centipedes or whatever, in case monsters crazily rushed out as soon as the castle gate opened up. But what the heck? What the heck was the meaning of this? All his efforts so far seemed to be in vain. The interior was utterly devoid of any life. Well, this is... Feeling somewhat dumbfounded, Jin stored Baraka's dagger back to his inventory and entered the demon's castle. It happened then.
Ta-ding!
As soon as a mechanical beep rang in his head, he immediately summoned both of his daggers. But that beep was nothing more than an alert to let him know that a new message had arrived.
A new quest is available.
A new quest, is it? It wasn't a daily quest? Well, it'd be strange if it was, since Jin made sure to complete the daily quest and pocketed the rewards before coming here. Meaning, this had to be a regular quest. And that would be his first ever. Well, yeah, I've been getting only the hidden quest or emergency quest until now, so... Excluding the daily quests that showed up every day regardless of how he felt, of course. Jin tilted his head slightly and confirmed the contents of the message. Confirm. Then the information on the quest appeared before him.
Ta-ding! Normal quest. Collect the souls of demons. Demons are everywhere within the demon's castle. Kill the demons and collect their souls to receive special rewards. One soul can be collected from a single demon, but on higher floors there are demons with multiple souls. Quest generation condition. Quest clear condition. Rewards, 20 bonus stat points.
That was the very first thing that attracted Jin's attention, the stat points. I can raise my intelligence by 20 points? A smile instinctively formed on his face. He'd been feeling his lack of MP for quite some time now. I need lots of mana if the Shadow Soldiers need to regenerate. And, was mana his only problem? He had already confirmed that the number of shadows he could extract, as well as the number of soldiers he could store, increased when his intelligence stat also improved. So for him, increasing the intelligence stat was a must. There always has been a limit to increasing that stat through level ups in daily quests, but now... If he could get his hands on that 20 points via the completion of this quest, then his problems would be solved in one fell swoop. He was salivating already. This doesn't count. This does not count. Not only that, Jin's gaze landed on other rewards.
Rewards.
He was feeling grateful for the bonus stats, but now he could even choose one item from the store, too? Can I really choose anything? Jin recalled those ultra-expensive items he saw in the store's menu. I definitely saw. There were some S-rarity items that cost billions, heck, even tens of billions there. Well, those billions weren't the real-world currency, but gold that only existed within the system, though. Still, just how amazing was this? The Night Killer he had been using so nicely until now cost only 3 million gold. A 3 million B-rarity item already possesses this high quality and attack power. So just what will those costing billions be like? His curiosity had been stoked for sure. Never mind the mystery third reward. Just from looking at those two rewards alone, he knew right away that he couldn't let this quest slip through his fingers. For this kind of rewards, killing one or two monsters is a walk in the park. Jin was genuinely elated now and thought about finishing this quest really fast to receive those rewards, only for his eyes to bulge out after confirming the quest clear condition. 10,000? He gasped out in sheer shock. This was already far beyond the notion of killing 1 or 2 monsters.
What the heck? What kind of slave labor is this?
He had no idea what kind of a monster these demons could be, but heck, 10,000 was a scary high number indeed. Still, a smile crept up on Jin's face.
Well, that would have been if I was alone.
Currently, the number of shadow soldiers he possessed was 50. Alright, back again.
Well, that would have been if I was alone.
Currently, the number of shadow soldiers he possessed was 50. If each one killed 200, this quest would be cleared. If he pushed his soldiers to work hard, surely this sort of quest would prove to be nothing but a cakewalk.
Will you accept the normal quest, collect the souls of demons?
Of course. He had no reason to refuse.
You have accepted the quest.
The penalty for failing this quest would be him wasting a bit of time, that'd be all.
Compared to other quests.
Without a doubt, this was truly a wonderful quest when compared to the class change quest or emergency quest where his life was on the line. Jin raised his head.
I wonder, is that thing supposed to display my progress from now on?
As soon as he accepted the quest, a counter he hadn't seen before appeared in the air just above his line of sight.
Collected souls of demons, 0 out of 10,000.
10,000. So far away.
A bitter chuckle leaked out of his mouth once he got to physically confirm the number that had been floating inside his head as nothing but a vague notion until now. It was then that he discovered a different counter to the left of that one.
Huh?
Experience needed for the next level up, 60,000.
There it was, 60,000 clearly displayed via the holographic display. As soon as he met that, he'd level up, or at least that's what was written there.
Even my experience points are being displayed now?
However, he had never seen anything like this prior to his entry into the demon's castle.
Maybe.
To make sure, Jin took a step backwards and left the demon's castle. Sure enough, both the counter for souls and experience points disappeared. When he stepped back inside, they showed up again as if they had never disappeared in the first place.
Yeah, they only show up inside the demon's castle.
Although it was unfortunate that he couldn't see them outside the castle, but at least it'd be quite convenient to have them inside, that's for sure. If he looked at it from another perspective.
Does this mean that it'll take a long, long time for me to conquer this place?
That was a distinct possibility. Jin carefully read through the quest details one more time and closed the message windows.
That should be enough preparation, I think.
Finally, he had some leeway to take a closer look at the interior of the demon's castle.
Ugh!
Jin's eyes widened immediately once he did. Inside of the castle was a ruined city. Quite unexpectedly, it was a field-type dungeon.
What is this place? Is this Seoul?
If everyone in Seoul died and 100 years had passed by, would the city look like this? Within this lifeless, ash-gray cityscape, only the lonesome streetlights flickered as if they were having a seizure.
I never expected it to be a field-type dungeon, though.
Not only that, a dungeon created to look like the metropolis of Seoul. This was the kind of scale that utterly disallowed any comparison to other instant dungeons that were based around a special location, such as subway stations or department stores. Jin's eyes narrowed to a slit.
So, where should I go now?
Where should be his destination? Jin's gaze scanned the surroundings in the distant horizon. Thankfully, his dilemma didn't last for long. In the far-off distance, in the direction where the famed Namsan Tower should have been, there stood a massive pillar of light stretching beyond the sky.
Let's head over there.
Jin began walking in that direction. He also made sure to memorize the surrounding area of the castle's gates in case he got lost on the way too. However, his steps had to come to a stop not long after. Monsters with smallish physical sizes began creeping out from the gaps of ruined buildings one by one.
Low-ranked demon.
Jin immediately recognized what they were from the dark red name floating above their heads. They look like...
These creatures,
sorry, I was thinking that it was another line from the system. These creatures reminded him of gargoyles, but without wings. There were a total of 8 of them. Seeing them, the corners of Jin's lips arched up. Well, for starters, I got myself 8 souls. Right away, the Baruka's dagger pierced deeply into the forehead of one of the demons.
you killed a low-ranked demon. You have earned 100 experience points. You have collected 1 soul of demons.
The moment the demon's attentions had shifted to the one with the dagger stuck to its forehead, Jin rapidly approached another to separate its head from its body. Slice!
You killed a low-ranked demon. You have earned 100 experience points. You have collected 1 soul of demons.
This one also gave him 100 XP. And I need 60,000 experience points. If he hunted down 600 low-ranked demons, then he'd get to raise his level. The remaining demons were taken care of in the blink of an eye. He had collected 8 souls, and the experience points earned were 800. Hey, this is not too bad. And they said that the journey of 1,000 miles started with the first step. Jin's eyes began sparkling brightly as he began searching for his next prey. In the office of the White Tiger Guild's Guildmaster, Baek Yoon-ho was browsing through several documents he had been neglecting in the past few days because of his busy schedule. Boop! He picked the phone up after hearing that beep.
Let him through.
A short while later, a familiar voice came from the phone speaker. Yoon-ho spat out a long sigh. Because of the darn reporters, I was thinking of being out of the public's eye until this whole thing dies down.
Stop riling me up, man. I'm not in the mood to kid around. If I find out just who leaked it to the media, I'm gonna...
Big news, is it? From Japan?
What happened?
Oh wait, he's just this isn't someone else speaking to him. This is just him saying all these.
Because of the darn reporters, I was thinking of being out of the public's eye until this whole thing dies down. Stop riling me up, man. I'm not in the mood to kid around. If I find out just who leaked it to the media, I'm gonna... Big news, is it? From Japan? What happened?
About a week ago, the Japanese Hunters Association secretly contacted several of Korea's large guilds. They said that they needed advice from the Korean hunters. And so, 2 days after that, a few of Korea's elite hunters traveled to Japan. The hunter Mien Byung-gu was one of them. Yoon-ho had been curious about that matter for a while now.
Stop building up the suspense and tell me what happened already. This was the first time the Japs have asked for advice from us. What made them do that? What did those prideful jerks want?
4 years ago, a Rank S gate opened up on the island of Jeju. Ants came out of there. There had been 3 separate subjugation operations since then, and all of them ended in failure. In the end, the Korean government gave up on the island, and it was now a barren land ruled by monsters.
How could I forget? I nearly died back then. A mutation, is it? But what does it matter to us? What does it matter to us? Aren't they just going to fight amongst themselves while being confined to that island?
The voice coming from the phone sounded rather troubled. That is the end of chapter 69, ladies and gentlemen. Onwards to chapter 70, and that is the last chapter for today's reading. Chapter 70.
You killed a low-rank demon. You have earned 100 experience points. You have collected 1 soul of demons.
And then it repeats more and more. For the next 2 hours, he madly hunted down every low-rank demon he could find. Afterwards, Jin confirmed the number of souls he managed to collect.
Collected souls of demons, 309 out of 10,000.
He had now completed about 3% of the quest. If he could continue hunting at this speed, then according to his calculations, he could level up in another 2 hours. His current level was 61. In the past, he needed experience points from 9 rank C dungeons in order to level up from 60 to 61, and the time spent was around 2 days, too. But here, he could already think about leveling up only after 4 hours? This is crazy. A thick smile formed on Jin's lips. How long has it been since he could hunt this enthusiastically? Is this the first time since then? He couldn't really remember ever being in a situation similar since he went to the Hapjeong subway station and repeatedly cleared the first 2 underground floors until his level didn't want to rise anymore. Whenever Jin's dagger flashed, 1 low-rank demon fell without exception. Sometimes even several of them, too. In the blink of an eye, Jin killed 20 more low-rank demons. This is a gold mine. Both his experience points and the number of souls continued to rise as he continued to hunt down the demons. Not only that, there was the added bonus of loot drops, too. A bright smile formed on Jin's face as he collected the loot. Their horns come out almost all the time, don't they?
Item, low-ranked demon's horns. Rarity, none. Type, miscellaneous. 2 horns attached to the head of a low-ranked demon. Demon's horns are used as base ingredients for high-grade magic spells and therefore can be sold at a high price.
Each of those fangs of Cerberus or whatever got me 150 grand each. But this, well, monsters of the Demon's Castle are really generous, aren't they? After experiencing the usefulness of the store multiple times recently, these Japtems no longer remain Japtems in Jin's eyes. All the gold earned through here would eventually become his flesh and blood later. I can't throw anything away. Feeling really chuffed, Jin sold off what could be sold and stored what should be stored as he rummaged through the remains of the demons. In the midst of this... What's this? He found an item he hadn't seen before, and the thing with its end poking out from the busted gut of a demon was...
Item, entry permit. Rarity, unknown. Type, unknown. A permit allowing you to enter the 2nd floor of the demon's castle. Can only be used on the 1st floor transfer magic circle.
It was a document scroll tightly rolled up. An entry permit? When he unfurled it and took a look, he found all sorts of undecipherable drawings and letters adorning its surface. In the end, the only thing that helped him understand its purpose was the item explanation. An item that lets me go up from the 1st floor to the 2nd, is it? Could it be? Jin took a look around. This place was inside the demon's castle, but at the same time, he was also inside the Daesung Tower. If the demon's castle was also divided into floors like the tower, then he'd be on the 1st floor. Since this place looked like a field-type dungeon, I didn't expect there to be different floors. Could it be that just like the Daesung Tower, there were 100 floors here? 100 floors here too? Jin was left agape by the sheer scale of this particular dungeon. It can't really be 100 floors, can it? There was only one way to confirm this, and that would be to locate that transfer magic circle and see for himself. Now, where would this floor transfer magic circle thing be in this place? Jin's wandering gaze stopped at the pillar of light piercing the sky. Well, that has to be it. Getting there was his initial goal, but his attention got robbed by the hunting of the low-ranked demons, and before he knew it, he had moved further away from his destination than before. Should I go there now? He thought that might be a good time to think about heading there. Also, he had hunted down all of the low-ranked demons nearby, too. Jin grinned slightly. Brightly. Summon. The Shadow Soldier stored in his shadows via the Shadow Storage skill didn't require any chanting or whatever to summon them, unlike when he was trying to extract shadows. In front of Jin, the giant beast soldier extracted from the leader of the Ice Bear pack appeared silently. And it was a giant monsterish bear standing on its hind legs. It was as large as a house, but to Jin it was not much different from a mild-mannered, lovable puppy. Get down. When the shadow beast soldier laid on the ground, Jin lightly jumped on top of its back. Giddy up. As soon as Jin lightly tapped the side of the beast with his leg, the shadow creature rushed towards the pillar of light with a frightening turn of speed. Thud, thud, thud. The massive creature also possessed incredible agility as well, and before long the distance between him and the destination rapidly closed up. Of course, they still encountered obstructions every now and then. One thunderous swipe from the beast soldier, and the situation normalized right away. Oh? Jin formed a deeply impressed expression. I only decided to ride it for fun, but isn't this actually pretty cool? Thinking that he should utilize this means of transportation often from now on, he even named his new ride right then and there. From now on, your name shall be Tank. Rrrr! The beast soldier, no, Tank, roared out while raising its head high up. Was it trying to say it liked it or hated it? What with its incredible powerful vocal cord, Jin couldn't really tell which was which. In the meantime, the light pillar got closer and closer. Tank gradually slowed down and eventually stopped before the light pillar. Nice work. Jin got down to the ground and patted Tank once, before storing the big guy back into his shadow. Then he turned around to face the magic circle. The familiar mechanical beep rang inside his head as soon as he did.
Ding! You have discovered floor transfer magic circle.
There was a magic circle carved on the ground. The light shooting out from it was reaching into the sky. Without hesitation, Jin stepped inside. Nothing happened. Jin tilted his head this way and that before taking a few steps to stand in the middle of the circle. Only then, another message popped up in his view.
No floors have been opened. Which floor would you like to transfer to?
How many floors are there? Of course, there was no reply. Is there no other way to find out how many floors are there, except for finding out for myself? Jin pondered for a moment. There wasn't that much left for the experience points, so should he stay and raise his level before going up? Or should he just go up and level up there? Unlike other instant dungeons, there's no monster respawn in this place, so staying on one floor would be inefficient in the long run. Besides, the system said that the demons with more souls existed on upper floors as well. He concluded that, for both his experience points and to clear the quest, it could be more advantageous to get to higher floors as quickly as possible. Fine. Let's go up then. Jin spoke up. Second floor.
You need the entry permit.
Jin summoned the scroll as per the instruction. As soon as it appeared, it dissolved into the light.
The second floor, the demon's castle, has been unlocked. You are transferring to the second floor.
Zzz. An even stronger ray of light began rising up from the magic circle. At the same time, Jin realized something. Ah, so that's how it works. As it turns out, this whole thing was just an elevator. The moment he realized what this pillar of light actually was, Jin was immediately transferred to the second floor, along with the blinding explosion of light. Second floor, third, fourth, and eventually the 27th floor. That was the result of grinding for 2 days straight. He told Jinna, his little sister, that he'd be on a week-long trip.
I have 5 more days.
Considering his gradually increasing clearing speed, he began to think that it might be doable to get what he assumed to be the last floor, the 100th floor, within the next 5 days. Maybe even sooner than that. Jin took a look at his surroundings. It was still a ruined city.
I can't tell which city this floor is based on anymore.
Every floor was modeled off on a different city. However, the higher he climbed, the state of destruction the city was in got worse and worse. And on this 27th floor, he found it hard to tell whether this place used to be a city or not. Would a city look like this after having experienced a concentrated carpet bombing? Jin quickly threw away useless thoughts and shook his head.
I shouldn't be wasting time like this.
He checked the time with his wristwatch, and it was already 11 in the evening. There was no day, time, or night inside this dungeon, so he needed to rely on his watch to keep time. 11 would be a good time to get some shut-eye if he wanted to continue clearing this dungeon tomorrow with a refreshed body and mind. But before that,
should I check the result of my hard work first?
Jin shifted his gaze over to the quest progress window.
Collected souls of demons, 2,116 out of 10,000.
Over 2,100, is it?
Meaning he had hunted down over 1,000 demons in a day. He had killed quite a lot during the last 2 days, that's for sure. It was still a long way off from the goal of 10,000 souls, but he was betting on the demons of the upper floors that allegedly possessed multiple souls.
Right. Getting to the higher floors should remain as my priority.
Next up, his level. Jin's eyes opened wider. Level
67.
His level had climbed to 67 even before he had noticed it. He had been hunting lower-ranked demons worth 100 XP for a while, but then his leveling up speed exploded upwards after he began hunting mid-ranked demons that gave out 300 XP each.
My level is climbing up real nicely, too.
Lots of monsters, rich experience points, and the perfect level of difficulty. The Demon's Castle was the best level-up zone one could ever hope for. His level wasn't the only thing experiencing a rise either. Jin's proficiency with his various skills was also rising up as well. Currently, the Night Killer was floating above Jin's palm. He was using the skill Ruler's Reach, the power that allowed him to physically manipulate objects without actually touching them. Even when he was doing nothing like right now, he devoted himself to increasing his proficiency with the skill.
Well, this Ruler's Reach skill doesn't require any mana to begin with.
It was a bit tiring mentally because he had to constantly focus on the skill, but compared to the potential uses the skill had, a small little headache was a cheap price to pay. What nice timing! A good piece of news arrived before his eyes.
The level of the skill Ruler's Reach has increased.
Nice!
Jin grinned brightly and leaned against the wall. He felt safer and more content as he became stronger bit by bit. His eyelids slowly closed.
Now that I think about it, the Guildmaster license must have been issued by now.
Was Jinno doing well? Perhaps it had been a while since he acted alone. He couldn't help but recall the mug of Jinno who used to follow him around. The successful firstborn who had become an excellent entrepreneur, and the secondborn with the qualification to become a master, but who was still a university student. The fight between them would not be easy.
Do your best, Jinno.
After cheering Jinno in his mind, Jin slowly drifted off to a deep slumber. Jinno entered a luxurious traditional Korean restaurant with a determined face. He chose this place after taking into account his father's taste. Has the chairman arrived yet? Yes, he's waiting for you. Jinno swallowed his saliva after hearing the maitre d'. That is 9. Please, this way. He was guided to the private room where his father, Myung-han, was waiting for him. The traditional sliding paper door was opened and immediately Jinno's nervousness increased by several folds after seeing his father's face. He wondered if he was getting weak-kneed again, but Jinno hardened his resolve and settled down on the opposite side of his father.
What's the occasion? You even called me first for this meeting.
Father, before I begin, I'd like you to take a look at this first.
And this is?
This is my Guildmaster license, as well as the records of the raids I've been in so far.
Your master license? Yours?
When Myung-han formed a disapproving face, Jinno nodded his head with a smile. Yes, father. Myung-han wordlessly took a look at the documents his son had handed over, and then a certain light began gleaming in his eyes. Please let there be another before the chapter so we can have a one per chapter. Oh, I hope not. Myung-han wordlessly took a look at the documents his son had handed over, and then a certain light began gleaming in his eyes. While his father maintained a weighty silence, Jinno's heart was beating so madly that he found it hard to even breathe properly.
And so,
Myung-han carefully placed the documents on the table and continued on.
You wish to run the Yujin Guild, is that right?
That's correct. It was at this point that a hint of a dilemma, alongside the emotion of shock, appeared on Myung-han's face. To think that father is pondering between me and my older brother. Jinno was genuinely moved inside. The fact that his father was thinking about this matter was a big win for Jinno. If it was in the past, he'd be satisfied with this much. However, he had no desire whatsoever to back off now. As you know already, father, giving the position of the Guildmaster to an outsider carries too much risk.
Enough.
Myung-han raised his hand. At the same time, Jinno's mouth stopped moving. Father's enough was one of the most absolute commands that no one in the Yu household could go against.
There is someone I want you to meet.
Pardon me? Jinno's eyes went round at that. He was the one who called and asked for this meeting, yet his father wanted to introduce him to someone? Who could it be? Just as Jinno's curiosity piqued, the door opposite to the one he used to enter the room slid open. Hello there. Was he in the late 20s or early 30s? A man around that age group awkwardly greeted Jinno as he entered the room. Who was this man? Jinno couldn't recognize this man at all. When Myung-han signaled with his chin, this unknown man settled down next to him.
This here is Hunter Go Myung-hwan.
Go Myung-hwan? Jinno tilted his head. He had never heard of this name before. Father nodded his head as if he had expected this already, and continued on.
He is one of the survivors from the White Tiger Guild's Red Gate incident. The one that's been making so much noise lately.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of chapter 70 of Solo Leveling. Whoo! Quite the eventful read. We see the emergence of Jin's dad. We see Jin becoming even more powerful. He is growing even stronger while he goes through the Demon's Castle. Jinno has got his guild hunter license, the events of the Red Gate, the loss of Kim Chol, and all the power that Jin is gaining is all starting to come to a head. But even then, we have really only scratched the surface of this story. Sorry, Mihai, there's no more swallowed his saliva, swallowed her saliva, or swallowed their saliva comments, so unfortunately we can't say that we had one per chapter. But 9 is the most we've ever had during a reading thus far. But to everyone who tuned in to today's reading session of Solo Leveling, I will see you all during the launch week of Borderlands 4. Because as most of you may know, I skip the week after I do a reading, so I can take a bit of a break and continue in the preceding following week. So I will see you in pretty much the second week of September for the next reading of Solo Leveling. From Mihai to Kitty Lover to everyone who watched me here today, all I can say to you is, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. And because I know you're coming back anyway. Have a fantastic day, and once again, as always, later, peoples.